I call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for April 23rd, 2018 to order. As required by open meeting law, we are required to inform you that we will be video, audio taping, as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience, video or audio taping must notify us now. Hearing no one, will you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Anyone for weekly briefing? Public comment and announcement.
Good evening, Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Harwich Chamber of Commerce. A couple of quick notes. I am happy to announce the 2018 Harwich magazine is at the printer and we'll have it in time for town meeting. This year we have a theme of arts and culture, and we have a 3-page article spread for the Harwich Cultural Center, so I'm very excited to have everyone see that. Also, this Friday is the Toast of Harwich, and there are limited tickets available still, so you can stop by the office. We have extended hours through Wednesday or until they sell out, and we are close. So hope everyone will come to the Toast of Harwich.
Thank you, Cindy.
I do. Hi, Chris Joyce, Voter Information Committee Chair. I just want to run through a couple of dates to start with. May 1st, we're hosting a candidates forum for the 3 candidates running for Selectmen. It'll be moderated by the League of Women Voters, and it's going to be here in this room at 6:30. That's May 1st. Also, we're going to be taping tomorrow a review of many of the warrant articles. Committee chairs, department heads, town administrator, and Board of Selectmen participations included. And that's, yeah, so that's tomorrow. It's going to be taped, and it'll be broadcast many times, as will the candidates forum up to town meeting and election. The other thing we're also going to do is tape most of the candidates running unopposed for the other 8 positions. They'll be interviewed by Voter Information, brief 5-minute interviews, and that also will be taped and televised a number of times. Thank you, Jamie. And just a reminder, town meetings May 7th and 8th, and the elections on the 15th. On another note, our committee heard secondhand that someone involved with getting signatures for a petition for the crematorium referenced, the petitioners referenced that they were working with the voter committee. Now, I'm not sure that's really the Voter Information Committee, but I did want to speak to the fact that, kind of for the record, most of you, I think, know that our committee's charge is to, from the Board of Selectmen, is to prepare voters for the town meeting, for the local elections. It also, to serve on that committee, also includes the requirement that we must remain neutral on any issue, any election, any warrant article. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear that our committee wouldn't take a position one way or another. We never do. You'll never see a lawn sign on our lawns. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Amy.
Good evening, Amy Usowski, Conservation Administrator for the town. Just wanted to quickly let you know about 2 events we have this week. The first, if you look at the screen, is the Arbor Day Seedling giveaway. It's our annual event. We give away hundreds of seedlings to citizens. You do not need to be a Harwich citizen. It's here at Town Hall. Weather permitting, we'll be outside in that back parking lot. If it's not so nice out, we'll be in the foyer. We're giving away pawpaw tree seedlings, flowering white dogwood seedlings, Indian currant shrubs seedlings, 9-bark shrub seedlings, and wildflower mix. We do ask, because it is a very popular thing, that you limit yourselves to one type, or one of each type. And then as the morning gets gets closer to noon, if you want to come back, if you want more, and see if we have any extras left, you're more than welcome to do so. But it does start at 8:30 a.m. And the next one is the 4th annual Harwich Tour de Trash, our own community cleanup event, where instead of the beaches, which we typically do during Coast Sweep in the fall, this is mainly roadsides and around community buildings. So it's on Saturday, April 28th. It starts at 9:30. It's at the Harwich Community Center. We're going to be over on the Council on Aging side, outside, weather permitting. You can sign up online at the Harwich Conservation Trust website. You'll be provided with bags, gloves, pickers, vests, providing lunch afterwards for you. There will be prizes as well. And it's just a good way to get out and get involved and clean up our beautiful town. So if you have any questions, you can talk to me, or you can go to the Trust website.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Robin Carley, Cemetery Administrator. I just want to remind everyone that this, tomorrow, we're having the historic gravestone cleaning workshop. And it's at the South Harwich Meeting House. It starts around 8 o'clock. We're going to have coffee and refreshments first, and a tour of the inside of the meeting house, and then we'll go out into the graveyard, and we'll be doing stone cleaning from 8:30 to 3. You do not have to stay for the entire time, but if you would like to come by, we would love to have you come over and view the meeting house, as well as help out with the gravestone cleaning. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Anyone else for public comment and announcement? Moving on, oh,
Mr.
Larry.
Chair. I just want to comment that, and thank Caleb and Jamie for all the work they've done to support the wastewater support committee. I know some of us, Michael, you have, Chris has, Peter Hughes has, I have sent emails thanking them, but I want to be sure it was made public that they did a yeoman's work on not only televising, but getting on the website, reorganized the website in fairly urgent manner.
Thank you, Larry. And just so everyone knows, Caleb and Jamie are our Channel 18 staff. Jamie's behind the computers. Okay, anyone else for public comment announcement? Consent agenda, Larry.
Mr. Chair, I move the following consent agenda items. A, approve minutes, April 2nd, 2018 regular session. B, approve 2018 renewals of junk dealer licenses for SIDS, A&J, and Woody's Furniture Repair. C, approve request for assistance from the Caleb Chase Fund. D, authorize the chairman to sign the FEMA Community Rating System annual recertification. E, approve the recommendation of the Housing Committee to select Arthur Bowden as Harwich's representative to the Barnstable County Home Consortium.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve consent agenda items A through E as read. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to new business. How many people in here tonight are here to talk about the pet crematory? Okay, I'm going to move that up on the agenda. So we'll start with that. I'm going to start by saying that everybody doesn't have to get up and say the same thing. We will absorb it. You could stand up and say, I agree. I will say that this has been a topic of conversation for the last few months, and we've had several meetings on it. The most recent was about 3 weeks ago when Robin Kelly came in and did a presentation to the board. I think at the time there was 4 people in the room. All of that information is available on Channel 18. You can watch that meeting. Richard Gunderson, a very active taxpayer, was standing at the mic and asked a lot of questions, but we did have a detailed presentation. This has been voted by the Board of Selectmen, and it's also been voted by the Finance Committee, so it is on town meeting floor. Nothing that gets said here tonight is going to change that. The debate will happen on town meeting floor. This was, like I said, talked about for quite some time, and there's a fair amount of information out there. I put this on the agenda tonight not because of a petition, but because one person asked for it to be on. The letter is not in the packet tonight. The petition questions are in the packet tonight. So the name of the person that I spoke to escapes me, but I did talk to him. I did explain everything that I just explained to you. You're not going to change the position. It's in the warrant. It's going to town meeting floor. So the debate, which I think will be a healthy debate, will happen on town meeting floor, and then a vote, I'm sure, will be called into that discussion. So with that, I'll open it up to the floor, whoever wants to speak.
I would, yeah. This might answer some of the, might shorten some of the questions. Bob Pianadosi, we spoke on the phone.
Oh, great.
One of the petitioners.
Thank you, Bob.
The other petitioner, Brian Parity, unfortunately something came up urgently today, so he wasn't able to make it, but he has a statement. My wife Barbara's going to read it for him. Anyway, my name, Bob Pianadosi, 89 Bank Street in Harwichport. We've had that property since 1976. Still makes me a wash ashore, so haven't gained any ground there. And thank you for the opportunity to come in tonight and discuss this. Also, I'd like to thank Robin Kelly, who actually reached out to me over the weekend. I'm sure she knew that I was on the opposition for this, but she was very gracious, and we had a great conversation, so I appreciated that. So here's what we've got. I'd just like to put a couple of finer points on, this is going to take about 3 minutes, on the outline of the petition. First of all, I think most importantly, which maybe is where I'm starting, is we don't have the money. We are borrowing to build this crematory. We have, if I understand correctly, and I'm new to this whole process, over $5 million in unpaid taxes, a proposal at the table, on the table today for over $6 million for new fire station. We have a sewage treatment system obligation coming down the road for $22 million. And if that is, and then that's, those are just a few of the things that are coming out of the town that we need to pay for. This is, this particular pet crematory is something we have to borrow money for. We don't have the money. An example of what I think is disappointing is that if we just look across the street to the library, it's been 3 years. We're looking at peeling paint, rotted columns, and I think we're coming to town meeting again to discuss, to get this thing done. It's part of the process. The process doesn't get us where we need to go. We voted the money, we didn't do the work, now it's going to cost more, and it's going to cost us more again. It's my belief that this project circumvents the 7-year capital expenditure protocol. How did this project get to the top of the list? The Cemetery Commission needs to demonstrate a clear and overwhelming need, not a want, but a need, to spend taxpayer money on this project. The lack of clear and accurate cost estimate to build this facility is very concerning. It's concerning to me. I'm sure it's concerning to other folks. Given our track record with most recently with the Harbor Master project, we need to take a pause. The project cost, as I was able to find a packet that was presented to the board, the building is $345,000. Cremation equipment is $91,500. Paving is $60,531. A sub-T base for $900, which comes to $497,000. The warrant article is $577, so there's some discrepancy there. I couldn't find it, but it may be somewhere. Let's not forget, we've already spent $7,000 in hydro seeding. A proposed walk for $50,000. I don't know where that came from, and I'm clearly open to hear the rationale. Other costs that I could not find relative to this particular project, and they may be someplace, but I couldn't find them. A septic system, landscaping, sidewalks, stormwater runoff, final utility tie-ins, furnishings, finishes, refrigeration, air conditioning. Costs underwritten by other departments. Fuel source connection for the crematory equipment, vehicle or vehicles. Note, in this packet it mentions that we will go out to bid once it is approved by town vote. if I understand this correctly, building that was proposed and shown to the Board of Selectmen is not a turnkey building. It's a building, and we were then going out to vote on a building. So all I ask is, where are the bid documents? Where are the specifications for this particular building? And they may be someplace, but again, I couldn't find them. You know, we need to know what we're building. And again, I couldn't find it. My, and I believe, justified concern is that we find ourselves with a project that is oversold, underestimated in cost to the taxpayer. Then, and we've done this before, we scramble to complete the project. Does this sound familiar to anybody? At this point in time, excuse me, what this plan clearly shows is the ability of the town to grow government based on a hypothetical need for a crematory. And I appreciate your words, Michael, about the mechanisms. I didn't know if there was a mechanism by which you can withdraw support for this particular project, and that's our hope. That's all I have. Barbara, you want to read Brian's? And Brian's, I looked at more from a cost perspective, and Brian took it from another avenue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara Panadosi, the better half of Bob. Thank you. I was given Brian's comments about 30 minutes ago, and I'm happy to read them for him because he cannot be here. I apologize that I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting. I had a personal issue surface that requires my attention. I partnered with Bob Panadosi in both writing and gathering signatures on the petition to get the pet crematory project on tonight's agenda. Thank you for allowing that. I'm providing the statement and requesting it be read at tonight's meeting. I strongly object to the use of taxpayer dollars to fund and operate a pet crematory. We don't have the money, we'll need to increase debt to fund it. And worst of all, the taxpayers of Harwich are the ones at risk when a service gap or revenue shortfall develops. Here are a few examples of how Harwich taxpayers are assuming the risk for this pet crematory venture. Number one, other town resources will be used to fill gaps that develop. This represents a hidden transfer of tax dollars away from their intended use to the pet crematory. Several have already surfaced and undoubtedly more will, such as veterinarians will need to market and sell to them and then provide customer service. Pet pickup service will require vehicle and staff. Website development and ongoing maintenance. When the viewing room is used, staff will be needed to comfort and explain process to pet owners, earn, nameplate, purchasing, display, and inventory management. It's been stated that no additional staff will be needed for this business venture. Therefore, existing staff will have to be diverted to the crematory in order to handle these types of gaps and other unforeseen needs. 2, there are some emerging market trends in the pet crematory industry that could present problems. For example, pet jewelry, where only some of the ashes are used to fill a pendant, earring, etc. Will this mean that Harwich will lose business unless it invests in a pet jewelry service? Pet composting. Instead of firing up the cremation furnace, a pet is finally composted. Composting is the green answer to cremation and is emerging in Washington state. Will this put Harwich out of business before the debt is paid off? 3, Harwich could be viewed as having deep pockets by trial lawyers. What happens when the machine malfunctions or someone drops the pet ashes and commingles or losing them, causing a pet owner to claim negligence, severe mental distress, etc.? Has the town attorney weighed in on this type of risk? 4, the hope is that this will make money for Harwich, but will it really? I understand that by statute a town cannot profit from the fees that it charges. So at best it would seem that all Harwich can do is cover its costs, so what's the point in doing this?
There are a lot of unknowns about the services to be offered, the costs, the revenues, and the risks associated with this business venture. And again, the Harwich taxpayers are ultimately the ones who are at risk. In addition, this project does not provide a single service needed to benefit the health, education, or safety of Harwich taxpayers. Finally, there are several pet crematory businesses that are already meeting the needs of Harwich and Cape Cod pet owners. Given the uncertainties and risks associated with this proposal and the lack of a complete business plan, I ask the Board of Selectmen to entertain a motion to reconsider and remove your support, as Bob said. Thank you. Respectfully submitted, Brian Parody, 26 Echo Woods Road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Matt Sutphin, Harwich. You all may have a letter that a copy of a letter I sent to the Chronicle with indicating my point of view about crematorium and, for that matter, the snack shack. I find it odd because I'm somewhat of an egalitarian, but here I am saying government has no business treading on the work of private enterprise where private enterprise is showing that it's capable of managing the moment. This is clearly an elective, another item to burden government, and it just seems silly. Getting an animal is an elective process. Taking care of an animal is an elective process. It's not like feeding a body, feeding a person, or looking after housing. It's taking away the energy from those efforts for something that clearly is being managed by private enterprise. In my letter, I asked that I said that I would be before this board to ask that the selectmen stand up and basically state their position on this, because I, as a voter, want to know how you want to manage the town money. So that is the gist of my letter. I would welcome you all saying how you stand on it. I realize there's some intransigence here because you've already stated your position. I do know that you have the power to withdraw the warrant, and I hope you would all get together and consider that as a way of advancing a more solid financial environment. We're in on, 2008 was a little while ago, not that long ago, and they have this term called hedonic treadmill, where we all get on a roll, and all of a sudden we think we can pull the money out of our pockets. And then, as history will tell us, we go too far. This, I believe, is where we are right now, and because the snack shack and the crematorium are just belong in private enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name's Chris Hammond, and well, it's been a while since I've been in this room, but I'm back. For those of you who don't know me, I own the property just to the west of the parcel, and can you believe it? I've been up there for almost 30 years now, and I don't want to say a lot. I want to save my comments for where they are meaningful, and that would be on town meeting floor. I really think that this is where this issue should be debated and resolved. It's not the first time we had an issue on Queen Anne Road. I remember a few years ago we had the Dave's Ribs situation up there, and we resolved that pretty good. Like I said, I'm right next to it. I can live with just about anything that the town decides to put there. Isn't it always about the money now? Show me the money. That's what it's all about. I don't know that I'm on board with the crematoria thing. Anybody that came into my shop, I would always, I'd talk about this thing that was going on, this pet project, and I used to talk with Jimmy Marceline too about the value of land. It was always a good topic, the value of land. And I always thought it was kind of funny that you take, and there's 4 lots there, they're 20,000 square feet apiece, 4 lots, and make a pet cemetery out of it. There's a lot of places that you could put a pet cemetery in the town. And on the other hand, you got to be careful what you do, too. If any of you remember the situation we had on the other side of this parcel, we used to refer to it as Fort Apache. That wasn't a very good situation either. I remember Mr. Salamini came in front of the Board of Appeals at least a couple times in this room, and you know, so I think the decision about the crematorium should be settled at town meeting, where it should be, and then what to do with the land, that comes later. You know, the town is not always willing to, quote, sell the land that they own, because it's valuable. You know, it really is. We own, between Pine Harbor Wood Products and Brian Barrow's new place, we own a parcel there too, 3.2 acres. And so we own property on the other side of the street too. And it's valuable. I mean, if I remember correctly, a long time ago, the purpose of taking these parcels back was to put them back on the market. But with the value of land the way it is, you know, we got to think long and hard about it. So those are my comments. I mean, I've tried to stay out of this since it got going, you know, because I'm right next to it. I really don't, you know, I have no problem with anything that goes on there as long as it's done right. It can make the town money, and I think it should be decided at town meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else?
Go ahead. My name is Hugh Drummond. I'm a taxpayer in South Harwich. And as I've said before this meeting, I'm opposed to the town going into business and competing against private industry. And secondly, I don't understand the problem we're trying to solve. Is there a problem out there? Are pets being laid on the street? No one's taking care of them? I don't understand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh.
Good evening. My name is Tom Birch. I reside on Queen Anne Road. I have 2 businesses on Queen Anne Road, and I get 26 separate tax bills from the town of Harwich. So I basically pay many dollars to the town of Harwich. I'm extremely disappointed that we're even discussing this. I don't believe we should be getting into a private business. I don't believe we should be, with everything we got going on in this town, from fire stations to schools we're going to decommission, to buildings were being torn down, to the Cape Cod Tech. We're getting strapped, and here we are looking for close to $600,000 to start a business on Queen Anne Road. I've cremated 3 pets. I've been to the Harwich animal, it's not an animal hospital, but the Harwich vet, spoke with them, asked them if there was a problem. She said, no, the service is great. It's not done on Cape Cod. The people come down, pick up the animal, take the animal back to their property, and return in person and hand the remains to the animal hospital. She said the system's great. They've actually cremated 4 of her dogs. It's been going on for 25 years. There is no problem. I have no idea why we're even getting involved in this. And I don't want my money spent on it, and I will vote against it now and at town meeting. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Tom. No.
Okay.
How you doing? My name's Don Holt. I'm a longtime resident of Harwich. And I just want to say that I'm totally against it too. And I think everybody else has said enough, so I don't really have to say too much, but I want to let her know that I'm against it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments from the board?
So So I did get the packet on Thursday. I was on vacation this week, so sorry I didn't get it till late. I will be answering all the questions that you have given to me, and I'll be doing a segment on Channel 18. And if you have any other further questions you want to send my way, do it in the next couple days, so that way we can include it, okay?
Thank you, Robin.
May I just have one more word?
Sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you. What's become apparent to me, I'm paying a little more attention than I have in the past, is I'm looking at the wording for the warrants. And I've noticed that all of them are very subjective in that they only offer one point of view. Whoever came up with the idea for A, B, C, or D, it's presented to everybody here without too much questions, so no interrogatories. I want to put before you the suggestion that in the future, maybe there's no description, pro or con, pro, obviously pro. Maybe it's just a statement of intent, or if there's going to be a description, at least make it two descriptions, one pro and one against, because what's happening is you, between the lines, you're basically creating an endorsement, and for those in the middle, undecided or whatever, they fall in line because they haven't made it their business to analyze the position. So I think that's something, well, I hope that's something you'll revisit with future warrants. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Don?
It would be easier not to step into this, but I'm going to. From my perspective, I know the board's taken a position. My participation in that was informed by a prior town meeting where this was a discussion, and I felt it was necessary to bring it back to another town meeting with a positive notion and see where the town meeting went with this. For me, I've had a number of questions the last time this came up about the business plan, or so-called business plan, and the marketing plan, and the idea of town making money off of a commercial enterprise. And I wouldn't want anybody to confuse me participating in that vote as being hugely supportful for the actual article. That's up to you. That's up to the town meeting. That preceded our action. It was clear that this was going to be brought from the last town meeting forward as a second component. Whether it's a wise decision or not, I leave up to you. I personally don't think that I've seen enough. I've had pets. I can't imagine having a pet euthanized and then taking him away from the vet and driving him somewhere. So on that level, just on my own personal level, I don't see where this goes. There's a lot of things we'd like to do, but there's a lot of things we need to do. And I expect all you folks to show up and voice the same opinion and see where it goes. If the rest of the town feels the way you do, you don't have to worry that we don't take an action tonight.
Anyone else on the board? Larry?
I agree with that. I've had more interest in this subject the last couple of weeks than any other subject we have on any other article on the warrant. And, a lot of good questions. And so I think if we were asked now, we'd all be second guessing a little bit what our previous decision was. On the other hand, I agree with the gentleman who said, let's go to town meeting. We had a meeting last year that indicated, as Don says, an interest moving forward, and I think it should be decided. And people I talk to won't be close votes, so we have that. I would comment just on his historical basis, possibly, that the comment that land is valuable and we should utilize it that way. I know a few years back, those two parcels, these two of those parcels, we went to town meeting twice to try to sell or lease those properties to private company, put that out for RFP, and there was no interest in doing that. There was more of an interest in saving that for the town, and so this was an idea to utilize those properties for some town benefit. And so that's part of what was behind that. But I do take the point that people are very happy now going to the vets and getting that done for them. And I also take seriously now we have the numbers on the risk to the town. The payback period, if you look at the 20 years, 7 years, and the 10 years, 4 back break even, but that is fairly optimistic assumptions. And so we have to be, I think we're all listening to your points. But I would be against taking action now because it is on the town, on the warrant article. Everyone will have a chance to speak. That's the way our government works.
Julie?
Yeah, I would agree, and I would reiterate what Dawn said is, you know, it's in front of us. It was voted at town meeting prior to, and we are following through in terms of what town meeting voted prior to bring it forward, to again bring it back to town meeting. It's up to you, and it's up to those who show up to make that vote, whichever way you feel. That's what town meeting's all about. So thank you for coming tonight to voice your opinion.
You know, all set? I would have to agree with the other three. This belongs to town meeting floor at this point. We are here every Monday night, with the exception of very few. This has been presented to us. We've had lengthy discussions on this. We have seen the material that Robin provided. Anyone in the audience that has any additional questions, I would urge you to get them to the town administrator's office or to Robin, and we'll put together a packet. Chris, I believe there were several questions asked that they deserve the answers to, so those will be in, and then I would say show up at town meeting. Just to clarify on the walks and the hydro seeding, town meeting approved the pet cemetery. This isn't about, tonight's not about the pet cemetery. So I don't know if you were at town meeting last year or not, but town meeting, there was lengthy discussion on this. It went to vote, and they passed it. In that passing, we built the pet cemetery. And just on Larry's comment, these pieces of land were before the town 4 times to sell. And town meeting, which is our form of government, denied selling those lots. Robin came up with the idea to make a pet cemetery there. She presented it at town meeting, and town meeting voted it. Last year, I think 379 people went to town meeting. 379 people made the decision for, I believe, 10,300. And if you don't get involved in these meetings, and you don't get involved in town meeting, it's hard to complain about it after the fact. And I spent the bulk of my life, with the exception of the last 4 years, not paying attention at all, figuring government was taking care of it for me. And every one of your voices matters, and every one of them counts. And again, this was on the agenda tonight because I was asked by one person, not because there was a petition, because we're not obligated to do this, but we do it because your voice matters. Finance Committee had 2 presentations on this. One, the presentation on the financials, was after they voted to support it. So, and Chris on the borrowing, he's done a great job outlining borrowing. And if any of you have watched the past meetings, I've been questioning an awful lot of the borrowing, and also talking for a lot of the people in the town of Harwich that talk to me about what they can't afford and what they can't afford, and what they can afford. So please come to town meeting and voice your opinion. And please urge all your neighbors to come to town meeting. It's really not up to the 5 of us. The 5 of us don't, without thought, make decisions. We're here for the week. We're here every single week. Please get involved.
I have one question. When this was presented way back when, is this considered by you people up there a want or a need? Thank you.
I'm not going to give you my individual vote on this. My individual vote was to put this before you. It was to support it, to bring it to town meeting, for the town meeting form of government to vote it. And I won't speak for the rest of the board. If they want to answer that question, they can, but I believe Don already has, and I believe Larry has, and Julie as well. So.
Jim Coyle, Pleasant Lake. I remember the town meeting and the cemetery proposal and so forth, and I remember it passing. I don't remember, was the $600,000 crematory, was that all part of the package? I don't recall that. My understanding was it was going to be a pet cemetery, and your dog died, and you either have it cremated or put it in a package or something. It would be buried there. I don't remember the building and all the expenses added on. Was that part of it at the time?
There was lengthy conversation about the concept of it, and that was coming forward. That was not part of the $600,000. That's what we're here this year for. but that was not part of the vote last year. But the concept was definitely out there, and it was discussed fairly lengthy.
So the people that were there, the 300, voted for
The
pet
cemetery.
cemetery, but there was no mention of the total cost.
There was mention of it coming back before you
Okay.
to build a crematorium, and that's what this year's vote will be. So no, that has not been voted.
Okay, thank you.
Bob Candace here, just quickly. The votes on the pet cemetery, they came on the second day of voting, is that correct?
That I don't know.
And my question is, how many people were present for that vote on the second day?
We had a quorum, and that's, I think quorum is 275.
How many votes carried the
I don't have that information. I can get that for you, though, Bob.
Yep. They'll be in the town warrant in the annual report. They'll be in the annual report, and the annual report's out now.
And just to kind of go back to one of my earlier comments, was the boardwalk part of that presentation to town meeting? And where did we get $50,000 to put the boardwalk in?
Chris, will you answer that?
I believe that was part of the original appropriation.
It was?
And it was to come out of cemetery perpetual care funds. I'm sorry, cemetery revolving account.
And that was presented at town meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't spend money if we didn't have authorization.
All set? We look forward to seeing you all at town meeting.
Yep. Thanks
Thank
again.
you. Thank you for your comments. Okay, we're going to go back up to the new business, item A, Municipal Housing Trust Training Session Responsibilities. I put this on there because there was a meeting. Let me find my notes. April 5th, there was a meeting, and there was no representation from the town of Harwich. So, Chris, my question really is, who's responsible to be at these? Who's responsible? Is anyone responsible, and should we make somebody responsible?
Yeah, I think to the point, Mr. Chairman, there was a meeting last week that I did go to. Actually, we also had Art Bowden and Charlene. I think one of the things that we'll do, just internal staff-wise, is just, make sure that when these issues come up or these opportunities come up, we figure who's going to cover. So no one from the town did go to that event. I don't know if we needed to be at that event or not, in terms of, I did go the one on Wednesday, and on the Wednesday meeting, it was kind of more of a discussion for people to kind of keep themselves up to date. And I know that we asked to, make sure that we stayed involved. In the last meeting on last Wednesday, I think there was 4 towns represented. And most of us said we all had something going to town meeting for the housing trusts. So we wanted to see how the housing trust worked out. And we were planning on doing something quarterly. So I think once the housing trust, if it goes through town meeting and gets formally adopted, and then the appointments are made to it, then we can certainly assign people to attend those.
Great.
We are a little bit in development stage, so we did miss it.
Okay. Larry, any comments?
I know Julie and I have talked about it a little bit. Quite frankly, I don't want to speak for Julie on this part, but I got a little confused because we have several groups that are sending us emails all the time to attend these meetings, and some of them are follow-up. I know one of the emails I responded to was what we're doing at town meeting. I sent them a draft article on the trust and on the funding for that. I would ask, maybe I'll throw it back to Chris and staff, of helping to sort this out on what's going on with the different meetings and give us some guidance on which ones to go to. Because in my opinion, there's a fair amount of duplication going on at the moment. And I'm struggling sorting out which ones are important, which ones are follow-up that may or may not be important. And again, I won't speak for Julie, but that's my read on that, and maybe ask for help.
Thank you, Larry. Julie?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. We discussed the fact that we're getting multiple emails on different pieces of it, some of it being trust-related, some of it being housing institute-related, and they're overlapping in their subject matter. So we found it to be, to your point, is this a revisitation of what we've already discussed? We need to see how the trust, does at town meeting before we really have more to add to that conversation. So I would agree.
And maybe Art's going to offer his help.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this subject, my committee, the Housing Committee, now we've reached out to the board Now, we didn't reach out and touch everybody. Emails went to Julie, and I think Larry got copied in. And anyways, our question was, what can we be doing? You know, and I haven't seen any education, anything when it comes to the trust. And I can see us getting to the meeting and someone's going to be way in the back of the room and stand up and say, what's a trust? And then you've lost it. Because once you have to defend yourself in court, you know, you're on the defensive. You know, when it comes to the water, you're doing great things with the water issue, the sewer issue, educating people. And I would think the trust would, you know, maybe not as important as the wastewater, because it's millions and millions of dollars, but it should be up there, you know, enjoying some, you know, motion. So anyways, the housing committee is here. You know, we have meetings every month. You know, reach into us if you want us to, you know, whatever, you know, go out and touch. But I know other communities like now in Brewster, they're very proactive. Their housing committee, they call it something different over there, but they're going out and making presentations to basically everybody in town and so on and so forth. So, but in Harwich, we're not doing anything, as far as I know. I mean, you could be doing a lot, but no one's communicating to me. And as far as I know, I'm still the chair. I still want to be the chair. And I'm willing and able.
Thank you, Art. You're doing a great job. Julie's going to respond to that.
So, Julie Eldridge did email and included Larry and I believe in that. And I did respond back to Julie, and we were trying to figure out what we could do to help get that word out. We actually, and I did speak with Chris to say, can we please make sure we get it on the website? Can we also make sure that we have any televised discussion on the warrant, et cetera, that it includes a description of what we're trying to achieve with the trust. And I did say to Julie that ultimately, and I had spoken with Larry as well, but ultimately that we felt, let's see what happens with the trust, and that we were putting information on the web and on the TV and anything that Chris was attending to make sure he touched upon the trust and the description and what we were trying to achieve. So we didn't disregard, and I did email her back directly.
Chris.
I do think, Mr. Chairman, part of the process that Harwich uses is there's several elements that we have to try to make sure that we educate people to what we're doing and the actions that are being taken. Certainly a considerable effort went into the presentation in front of the CPC. There were at least 2 or 3 presentations. One of the things that we have done, at least from an administrative standpoint and working with the folks from the cable, is we have a lot of these meetings are now televised. So a lot of folks don't have the opportunity to always show up, so I think doing the televising some of them makes a lot of sense. So there were at least 2 or 3 presentations done at the CPC level throughout the process, and then obviously with the Board of Selectmen endorsing the town meeting warrant, and then going to the Finance Committee. And we've received fairly strong favorable votes on this, which I think that when people show up at an open town meeting, you certainly hope and rely upon that these boards and committees are doing their due diligence and looking at these proposals and carefully analyzing these proposals to see if it makes sense to bring it before a town meeting. So we have done that. I know voter information is tomorrow morning, so some of this timing for us is all sequenced to when topics are. And you know, I don't dispute, we have a lot going on. There's a lot that we're trying to accomplish as a town. So wastewater has been, you know, taken up a fair amount, and I think that that's also a lion's share of where the money is being spent. So, you know, could we do better? Absolutely, we can always do better. But I think that is a topic for tomorrow morning on voter information guide, and hopefully we'll be able to get more information out there. And also, we do have, I want to put a plug in that the press has been very accommodative to go through, and if there are questions about certain topics, I think that they usually stop in and say, what do you have and how do you get some information? So we try to do on cable, which makes it to YouTube, and then we also try to do in the newspaper. And then the warrant document, which just came in, I think last Friday. We try to do explanations in that on a lot of different topics, but 69 topics were covered, so there's a lot of topics that we try to cover. So we do try to do our best to get that information and word out there.
Thank you, Chris. All right, just in a quick count on my notes, we had 13 public meetings on the Housing Trust, 4 of them that you were at. So we're doing our best, and of course, we can do better. Chris, now that we have a whole bunch of new people in the audience, will you just quickly tell them what the Housing Trust is?
I know, it is nice to have the opportunity. What the town is attempting to do is the town has in the past had a model of having kind of volunteer committees look at how to engage in the affordable housing effort. And one of the things is it's a lot to be a developer. It's a lot to ask a volunteer committee to be a developer. And what some neighboring towns have done, the one that we have copied their model, if you would, is the town of Yarmouth. Yarmouth established a trust, which is basically a quasi-municipal entity that will be given funding sources to look at and explore possibilities to enhance and improve affordable housing opportunities in the area. The way the Housing Trust in Yarmouth operates, and there will be a member of the Board of Selectmen, there's 5 people on there. I did volunteer as town administrator to be on there. I have some administrative capabilities, obviously in the nature of my job, and the Yarmouth model had the same. So we understand if we need legal services or if we need engineering services, we have some of those in-house to be able to take advantage of those. The Yarmouth model, which I happen to think is a good model, is if there are developers in the community that are developing projects and they want to be able to partner with somebody, because affordable housing generally doesn't have enough to be sustainable from a business plan perspective. So they need some kind of subsidy to make these projects work. So their trust actually helps to create that subsidy and helps the private sector enhances their ability to do more affordable housing. The other thing that we will do is to look at town-owned property to see if the property that the town has can then be turned over, so it goes from the town to the trust. The trust, again, would be a separate municipal entity under the umbrella of the town, can look at town property and see if we can develop some housing initiatives with that. There's buy-down programs and other programs that, again, as much as we're able to partner, I think just to create what the realistic expectation is, Yarmouth has probably been in existence for about 10 to 15 years, and it took a while. They did several small projects, and now they are finally building up into bigger projects. Why do all this? Probably is a good question. The state law has kind of a mandate in it that they want every city and town to get to 10% of their housing stock should be affordable. I believe we are at 5.4 or 5.6%, so we're below that target. And the state has different means, if you would, to encourage people to get to those. And if you don't, then if someone wants to come in and do a 40B project, an affordable housing project, there's very little a town can do to slow that or stop that project. So if you get to that 10%, you determine your own destiny. And I think that that's what this Housing Trust helps us to do, is to be able to determine our own destiny and move forward. Don?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. It's not often I'm called upon to actually give the Cliff Notes to anybody's presentation, but I'm going to give it a shot. First of all, in terms of my own participation or lack of in some of these workshops, a lot of them are aimed at different stakeholders. I've been in the game for affordable housing and workforce housing since 1998. I'm vice president of HESH, Harwich Ecumenical Council for Housing. I know most of this stuff, and I work with most of this stuff. So I've encouraged individual members of the board to participate so that they would get up to speed, because it's important. We have been experiencing most of this as a series of one-offs, as if they're totally unrelated to everything. We do have money in different streams. The CPC, which is actually a surcharge on all your tax bills, sets aside a certain portion of that money, has to go to affordable housing. I mean, personally, I start from the position it's the right thing to do, and nobody has to hammer me with a baseball bat to do it. You can't have a sustainable community without CNAs and phlebotomists and people that take care of other people. Even if you retire here, it's not sustainable. Now, beyond that, how do you handle competing things? We have the cell tower out in East Harwich, that generates money. We have the money, we have some land, but putting this all together with volunteers has always been difficult. And how do you count things that aren't the same when they're competing against each other? It's actually much broader than what Chris is saying. The possibilities for a trust exist, and Hesh has been involved with them in Eastham and in other places, where there are rehabilitation programs that can happen. People who own houses that need money to keep them sustainable and livable. There are people that want to build affordable housing communities. There's the possibility of putting out our own friendly 40B, where 25% of it would be for affordable, and that actually means something with a capital A. There's a percentage of the income that would service. But we could also make the second portion of that, rather than a commercial endeavor where people get to build big houses and live in them with lower overhead because they take these other 25% along with them, we could do workforce housing in combination with affordable housing. There's a lot of things that can be done, but picture yourselves being on a committee and trying to figure out, okay, which one are you going to do, and how are you going to do it? The idea of doing this professionalizes it. It has still a component of the government in it. You've got town administrator, you've got a selectman, but it takes all these things and it kind of draws them all together and says, okay, each year, what can we look at? What do we want to rehab? What do we want to buy down? What do we want to build? And do this in some sort of comprehensive way, so it's not just a hodgepodge of, well, we got some money we got to spend this year, and we got some property over here that we might be able to do something with. And it makes it prioritized. I urge you guys and everybody who's watching this to come to town meeting and support this, because this is going to be the centerpiece of where we go in the future, to be able to spend your hard-earned money and get some result out of it, instead of just trying to throw money at things. And it isn't just because the state might do something. The state has several different measures they can do, one of which is the ZBA has to listen to 40B, that's affordable housing projects, where they're only obligated to give you 25% of the project. So on 20 units, that's not a lot. The rest of that could be McMansions that are being able to be built on smaller plots because they get cut a deal for the conscience money for the affordable housing. If we feel that that's okay, and that's where as much as you want to spend on the time on it, that's great. But this is going to be a permanent organization with permanent cash flow that will be able to sit down and rationally come up with how do we get from here to here. The state also has penalties. It's not just 40B projects that are hostile, and they can impose those penalties. They have not on us because we have made progress through the years. So I would hate to do something because we're being bludgeoned into doing it. This is one of those things that's a great idea, and it's a wise use of your money.
Thank you. Just to add to that, it's also local initiative programs. We can work on things for local people, local seniors, local workforce. It won't be just sent out of state. The other pitch that was made to CPC for your money this year, there was $500,000 that was stuck in there. We haven't done anything in housing out of that fund for 3 or 4 years. It's just sitting there. The other pitch was for 3 home buy downs at $125,000 apiece, plus $25,000 in legal expenses that had to be advertised statewide. So that money almost, without this concept, went to 3 home buy downs at $125,000 apiece. And that's outside of our control also. That belongs to the CPC committee. So they voted, they thoughtfully voted, and thought that this trust made a lot of sense. Anything else?
No.
All set? RFPs for Sacco, Tucket, Snack Shack, and Bank Street property. Chris, I'll let you
So,
take the lead.
Mr. Chairman, we have draft documents available for the Sacco, Tucket Snack Shack and the Bank Street property. Just to remind folks, maybe in context, on the Sacco, Tucket land side development, we had an initial budget of $3 million with an expectation that we would look at obtaining grants. The Harbor Master has been successful in obtaining an additional grant of $1 million. What is being requested before town meeting at this town meeting is that the limit of $3 million basically gets us a scaled down version of what was presented. What was presented at town meeting last year, which is in the materials, was to do the Harbor Master's office, a garage, and a snack shack. When we went out to bid, there was insufficient funds within the $3 million to finalize the boardwalk and to do the snack shack and to do some additional parking at the former Downey Street property. So those items had to be taken out in order to live within the $3 million that was appropriated. If the $1 million is approved to go from 3 to 4, utilizing that grant money, we would construct a, I think it's about 500 square foot snack shack. The idea behind the snack shack originally was not to compete directly with the businesses in that area, the restaurant businesses in that area, but to provide a supplement that people come in off the boats, they want just a quick sandwich, they don't want to go and sit down and eat, or they need a bag of ice, they need certain things. So the plan did include the snack shack, and some of the points have been made. Government can do certain things pretty well, and certain things we don't do so well. So this is one where I think it makes more sense to do a RFP, which is a request for proposals, to send out to the private sector and say, we have a 500 square foot building located on the waterfront, and we would like to have some of the amenities, including obviously food, and the idea behind it is to have a proposer submit a proposal with an expectation of how much money the town could receive from contracting that out, with the concept that the money that we would bring in would be used, if you would, to offset the original construction cost of some of those improvements, including the snack shack. So that snack shack, I believe, is in the area of $350,000 to $400,000. The draft RFP that we have put forth, which is in the meeting materials available online for folks, does call for about $550,000 a year. So that would be a replacement cost, or we would recover the money spent on the snack shack in an 8 to 10 year timeline. One of the things that we need to do in the RFP route is to make sure we lay out the expectations for folks and make sure that people have a clear idea of what they get. Last year at town meeting, we could only, by state law, only approve leases up to 3 years. Town meeting was asked last year if we could go up to 10 years, and town meeting said yes. For that site, you can go up to 10 years for a snack shack or restaurant type concession. So the RFP is drafted based upon a 5-year with a 5-year extension to get to the 10 years. So what's really before the board, in at least initial discussion, is the outline of the proposal that we would request for proposals that we would put out on the street for potential bidders to bid on. And in terms of the level of interest, I know that I believe in the correspondence that the board's received, there's been at least 3 or 4 vendors who have expressed an interest in bidding for this service and renting this out. One question that will come up, and it's a good question they ask public folks to do an awful lot, is how did you come up with $50,000? The nice thing about working in the public sector is that we can go to other towns and see what other towns have done and what those revenues are that they've achieved. And the town of Orleans, unfortunately, they just had one that got destroyed in a storm. But we saw some in the range of $30,000 up to $85,000. And the $85,000 was about 2.5 times the size of what we're looking for here. So the $50,000, I believe, would be a minimum. So we would go out to bid, and if people bid the minimum, that we would be guaranteed that $50,000 would come in. So that's the concept behind, and the RFP is really the formalized process. The RFP would not formally go out until after town meeting takes action and approves the construction of it. Doesn't make too much sense to put an RFP out if there is not going to be a snack shack to construct and to lease out.
Thank you, Chris. And that was my question. It's important to note, we're not sending this RFP out. We're just putting the pieces together so town meeting has them. The other piece that we're putting out is we're going to have an actual quote of the work that's left to be done at the harbor as a change order, so that the voters know what's going to be spent out of that $1 million grant if they approve it. So we are gonna, the work to finish the project, and then the work to add the snack shack to it will be presented at town meeting, so town meeting voters can say what they want. Board, Larry?
I appreciate you putting together the draft, because I think it informs town meeting. This will be a big discussion on whether we go ahead or not with a snack shack, and this was, we had questions in the past of what actually is a snack shack, so this informs that discussion, so we'll leave it for town meeting.
Thank you. Julie?
No, I think that, you know, I appreciate Chris's time in putting this together and other members, and ultimately, you know, we're trying to get the best RFP together that we can to be prepared to see if it's successful at town meeting. And again, it belongs to town meeting, and we'll see what happens, so.
Julie? I'm sorry, Janelle?
I was a little surprised at the detail of this RFP. It seems to me that we're basically outlining a business plan for whoever wants to answer it, and I'm a little concerned about that. I clearly have stated that my support for food at the harbor is 100% public-private joint venture, and I would not support this RFP just based on the detail. I think it's, I don't know, it doesn't really make any sense to me as to why we have so much detail down to what they can sell for cold drinks, what they can have on their menu, the price of their items on their menu. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Don?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I got to go back to last town meeting again. I was a participant at that. That was before the elections. I actually sat next to Leo, and I was not in favor of it at all, but it passed. At this point in time, for the last 9 months, I've said the town meeting voted for a snack shack. We've run out of money. We've got the grant. We put it in front of town meeting and tell them we have the money. You can take it to buy down the debt of the project or complete the project you voted for last year, which is, I've never wavered from that. So where we're at with this, I understand where Janelle's coming from. I looked into this myself, and I know that Orleans, when they were dealing with John Oman and Liam's, when it existed, that there was that kind of specificity. They asked, because they rate things on a basis of bonus points, like what are you going to give for this, and we need to have a get, which is, you know, the lease payment. To the extent that Matt and a bunch of other people out in the audience have said, you know, tonight about, you know, town getting engaged in property, we're not running this, but we do have property that we're offering that we expect to get a fair return on. To me, that was always different from going into a restaurant where we gave property to somebody to run, and we were basically walking away from it for the entire expense out period of it, whatever that might be, 30 years, 40 years. And then when we get it back, I'm not sure it would be worth anything, but we've actually gotten into the game then, because we're facilitating a real restaurant in competition with people who have to put capital at risk. Town meeting voted for this. Town meeting gave a certain amount of money for this. We borrowed that money. We weren't able to finish the project the way we promised them, so we've got two possibilities here. And I again say, come to town meeting. You want to buy down what you borrowed? Then this gets turned down, and we turn the grant into, we sink it back into the money that we borrowed, and thus reduce the cost of the project that remains. If you want this and you think it's a good idea to let a private business run it and get some money back for it, then vote for it. That's what town meeting is all about. We're only the legislative body. Every year we're only the executive body. Every year the legislative is the town meeting. This goes back hundreds of years, and it's a great idea. Most places that anybody has lived in, when you weren't born here, you don't get that shot. So it's up to you what you want to do with this. It is certainly town land, and it was certainly a town meeting action, and this one did contain an actual specific reference. It wasn't like we're gonna bring back a snack shack like the pet crematorium. This was there. There was ample discussion about, it was an amendment offered on the floor to take it out, and it didn't pass.
Julie?
In terms of your question to Janelle on the RFP, a lot of that is, to Don's point, is to have apples to apples and to be able to rate it so that the bare minimum of these people who are going to submit a bid understand all of the parameters so that we can weed people out or into the final. So it really has to be very specific.
Does the board want to vote on this? So to give Chris direction so that we don't bring it back? Chris?
Well, just, I do like the idea, if the board's comfortable with the concept, maybe vote the concept. I know in discussions we have a few folks from the planning board who have done a lot of development in the Boston area that are a little bit more seasoned at this than I am. They are working on helping us to draft the lease document that the person would sign, which would have to be part of it. So I think if the board was comfortable with this concept, it probably would be good to have a vote in favor of the concept, but that we would bring back a detailed RFP and lease after town meeting. But this gives town meeting, I think, a sense for what we believe we could obtain in the marketplace.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Richard Waystack. Just a quick question of parliamentary procedure. Are you discussing both of the RFPs at the same time, or are you going to be voting each one separately? 'Cause I have some. Okay, thank you.
Support the concept?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. Does that mean that we're scotch taping ourselves to this and only this, or is this, will those other documents come for subsequent approval, if indeed town meeting?
We'll be back with those. They're still in draft form. That's why I haven't presented them yet.
Okay. Well, on that basis, I'd move to support the concept.
Just the concept.
Just the concept.
Yeah.
Support the concept? Larry?
Does anyone second that, or?
I need one.
I'll second it.
Okay. Moved and seconded to support the concept of the Snack Shack
Well,
RFP.
I just want to be sure I understand the concept. The concept is to prepare a draft RFP.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Let him move forward with it
Kind of
versus
consistent
wasting
with
his
what
time.
you have before you, you know, I mean, that's what we're going to start with.
With the explicit ability to come back and actually vote a final document.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
Janelle?
I have a question as to why we're going to support the concept before town meeting has even voted to support the Snack Shack.
Basically, we're supporting Chris not spinning his wheels. So if we don't support the concept, there's no sense in paying staff to create a lease and to finalize an RFP. So if we disagree with this, then we stop here and nothing else gets done on it.
Why do we need the RFP or the lease prior to town meeting? If the concept's already out there and town meeting hasn't voted whether or not the Snack Shack is even going to happen, why do we need the lease and the RFP before town meeting?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do think that there were requests from people that have been in the audience during some of these discussions, and they've said, well, what does an RFP actually going to look like, and what revenue do you anticipate out of it? So this is trying to be responsive to some of those concerns that were raised earlier in the process.
And if I could add, I don't see us finalizing it until after town meeting. This is only a draft,
Right.
you know,
Concept.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The flip side of that is the age-old comment from everybody here is, how did that happen? We need some sort of possibility to show town meeting what it might look like. And again, that's why I wanted to retain the authority about what it is actually going to be based on the sense of what town meeting was. But we're often criticized for bringing things to town meeting and say, vote for this concept and we'll engage you later and ask you for your opinion. And it doesn't always happen, through the years. This is a baseline. It shows what we're up to. And if that gets rejected, there's no sense in going into the actual bid, but there's no going back from this and doing something radically different if that was the centerpiece of what you brought to town meeting, because this is what we're intending to flesh out. That's why.
Thank you, Don. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
4-1, Chris. Next up, sale of real property, 203 Bank Street, which is the old fire department, which was also a conversation at last year's town meeting. Currently occupied by the harbor master, but with the new building of his maintenance shed, it will be a vacant building. Chris?
That's absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman. And based upon that, the intent of the article last year was that when the landside improvements are done, that we have currently the harbor master's storage facility and garage facilities are located at 203 Bank Street. And the concept is that once the building is finalized, that will be moved over, making this property vacant. And as part of the warrant article for last year, there was a specific warrant article for to sell 203 Bank Street and to have the proceeds of that go towards the harbor debt or the harbor project on the land side. Now that that harbor project is underway, the garage would be built, that now it does appear on the horizon, most likely in the fall, that 203 Bank Street will become a vacant property. At that same town meeting, the discussion ensued in regards to, okay, if it is vacant, what should the land be used for? Certainly under traditional request for proposal, what the state would like us to do in the law is to get the highest and best value that we can. And at least I was at town meeting last year, and it was very clear and distinctive to me that town meeting said that they would like to have the property sold off initially and targeted for open space purposes. So we have crafted a request for bids or request for proposal to sell off that property for conservation purposes. It does make sense that it would be for conservation purposes because it does abut two conservation parcels already. One that is owned by HCT, Harwich Conservation Trust, and the property in the back is actually conservation land that continues to be owned by the town of Harwich. So to have this be adjoin those parcels probably does make some sense. So we have crafted the RFP for conservation purposes for the sale. We will engage or have engaged a appraiser to get an appraised value of that. It was also, I guess, my thought from town meeting's action, if no one bid on it or the bids were too low, certainly the board doesn't have to approve that, then it could be used for highest and best uses, which would probably mean housing of some kind or reutilization of the building that is currently as garage space for the harbor master. But I think that town meeting's intent was clear that they wanted to see a priority given for conservation purposes, so we have drafted this under that auspice.
Thank you, Chris. Don?
I had some understanding, maybe I'm misinformed, I had some understanding this was of a piece of the whole cloth where we're talking about the bog to the south and the current conservation land, and we weren't real interested in putting more in there because the Harwich Conservation Trust was looking at some innovative ways of doing nitrogen removal. Am I wrong with that?
Well, not only Harwich Conservation Trust, town meeting authorized $2 million for attenuation in Cold Brook. So
yeah, well, I'm talking about the destination point. That's what I understood.
there was
the
definitely
destination.
comments made by several people that they weren't interested in adding any nitrogen to the area, and was the focus on the conservation piece of
Yes,
this.
we definitely have a couple of different initiatives, if you would, at the same time. Harwich Conservation Trust, who has been a good partner, and we have had, I think, very constructive conversations with them, would like to take the cranberry bogs, which are not good for the environment, not good at creating a diverse habitat, and not good at removing nitrogen. They would like to just, their primary mission, if you would, is to have that be returned to a natural state. It could be returned to a natural state and not be a benefit for nitrogen removal. And that's where we've had discussions that can we return it to a natural state and accomplish nitrogen removal at the same time. And as I have learned a lot more biology that I've probably had as much biology now as I've had since I was in high school, that the gist of it boiled down is that ponds and salt marshes are very good at removing nitrogen. And marshland is okay at removing nitrogen, but not as efficient as those other two means. And what we have been in conversation with is how do we improve that property and this is the Cold Brook area, and they have a new name for it, which I promise I will learn that new name, but they have changed the name on it. But we are in conversation with them. So I think in this case, whatever we were to do in the sale, we want to make sure we wouldn't do anything that would cause negative nitrogen issues regarding the sale of this property to be in concert with the property that is already under conservation control.
Don?
Yeah, but distilling that down to English, the attenuation, whether or not you attenuate the nitrogen, if you add 5 to 10 or 12 bathrooms, you know where that's going.
Conservation land would
and as
be
much as I
distinctly better.
like the idea of affordable housing, it's insane to at least not pursue the idea that, even if it were neutral, to do this, adding more bathrooms to that property is most certainly going to add more nitrogen to the surrounding property.
Absolutely.
Janelle?
Yep.
Yep. Julie?
Well, I remember when this originally came up, I was proposing that we, create lots and make the most for the town to offset the cost of the project, but ultimately it does make the most sense based on the money we're already spending on Cold Brook and the money we're spending on wastewater in general to not contribute more nitrogen and to do our best to reduce it in whatever way we can. So if we go into a partnership with Conservation Trust, I think that's to the benefit of the whole town better than it is for the money that would defray the cost of the project, so.
Larry?
Town meeting spoke last year, so we're following that through. My only, I was hoping to find in the RFP some tie-in between the assessed value and the minimum we would sell it for. Because I don't think we want to give it away below what the appraised value is.
We'll
So I'd like
put
to
in
be
the
clear
minimum.
on that it's going to be, we don't plan to give it to anyone. It's going to be for value.
Which was my thought. Going through the RFP process with a single bidder seems like we should just be going to the town meeting and asking if we should sell this to Harwich Conservation Trust. And I wonder if the RFP should be a little more broad and at least give people a choice and get some, there's only 2 lots there that are buildable. So it wouldn't be more than 2 homes. And to your point about being neutral, there was a fire station there. There was a lot of people working in that fire station. I'd say we'd be better than neutral based on the calculations that were done. So I wonder, Chris, if we should put this as a little more broad, get some responses to the RFP, give people time to, or people a chance to comment on it, and then have a conversation and a board vote on that. Janelle?
Just one quick thing that I would like to point out is when it was a fire station, the developments didn't exist off of Bank Street. I don't remember the name of it, but between the 2 cranberry bogs, that didn't exist. And I even think like the Kroll's house wasn't there in the back, so.
Okay. Mr. Waystack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things. I'm one of those people, I read through all the Selectmen's agenda, and I read through each page of the Snack Shack RFP as well as the Bank Street RFP, and the disparity between the 2 of them was glaring. Ms. Kavanaugh mentioned the Snack Shack having an apples-to-apples comparison and the criteria that was there, and there's no such thing in the RFP for Bank Street. And it seems like it's a fait accompli, that we're going to have a 1 bidder on this. I don't like the fact that it's strictly nonprofit. We're talking, you heard people talking about tonight, the amount of money that this town is spending on various projects. And it's 2.06 acres. The best use of that is probably 1 parcel or 1 building lot there. There was a fire station. The RFP doesn't say anything about keeping the fire station or tearing it down. There's nothing in there. And if a nonprofit's going to buy it, what is the expectation for that building that is there? Are they going to have to renovate it? Without a criteria in an RFP, how can you rate the RFP? So I think this particular RFP needs a lot more work before it can come back even as a draft, and I'd highly recommend that you take another shot at redrafting it so that we can have something that you can make a decision as Board of Selectmen, is it the right thing for the town? Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
It was certainly not as developed as the other one, so I don't dispute that. We need more work on it.
Anyone else want to comment on it? So we can safe to say we should do a little more work on that and bring it back?
Yep.
Thank you. Harwich Cultural Center.
apologize in advance. I have a sore throat, so I'm sorry.
Thank you for all the work you did on this.
Thank you. I'm going to have Jamie start with a quick update, if you don't mind. We're just going to show you one of the commercials that's been playing on the local media. So.
Here at the Harwich Cultural Center, we have what's called the main building, and we have the activity wing. Here in the main building, there's 14 classrooms on the first floor and 14 classrooms on the second floor. Those are utilized by artists, wholesale people who make goods and then bring them to market. And then we have a basement studio, which has a letterpress and letter carver artist in that space. We've also retained public areas in the building, such as the former library, the former art room, the music room, the auditorium, cafeteria. And those are for events and functions or classroom space for people to come in and teach. We are bringing in other individuals who are looking to give classes and really give back to the community and fill the gap in areas that aren't being utilized here on the Cape.
I needed a wonderful space to work where I could spread out my many supplies and media and the work that I do. And it was not working in my son's bedroom or anybody.
It's at the beginning of getting to know each other and each other's work and trying to figure out ways that we might begin to work together.
So I've been looking for a space to use to do my own work, but then ultimately to give classes.
But I think certainly making it available to the next generation of people who think they might be interested is absolutely critical. And so to have a platform in this space where there is a lot of flow, people coming in and out, and having my door open every day. People make it down to the basement, I'll be happy to chat with them or even show them how I do what I do. I was very fortunate in the teachers that I found that allowed me to inhabit their space and learn from them over the course of traditional apprenticeship on the letterpress side and then a briefer grant-funded apprenticeship on the letter carving side. So I feel this tremendous debt to the teachers that have made time available to me. I want to provide a similar service.
Stairs that I'm planning on teaching caustic workshops in. There are a bunch of other people, so we might like rent it by the week and do 5 artists, 5 days, and do a workshop for a continuous week, different workshop every day. And so all of those kinds of things to really bring arts into the community. Spectacular. Everything's in great condition. They're more than willing to help you and encourage you, which I think a lot of artists need. And as far as the community goes, I think there's a real need for this type of facility that people can come to, feel welcome at, and actually look around at some of the work that's done here. I'm just blown away. It's just amazing.
I love the space. I love being part of the community.
And just to do it because it's available, it's affordable, and I'm just doing it to amuse myself, and I think that's fine as far as it goes. But again, we have this opportunity to sort of turn ourselves outward to the community, and not just in Harwich, but all of the Cape.
I can do what I want, and I'm happy as a clam being here. I couldn't ask for more.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that's a lot more interesting than hearing me talk about it. Those are people who are actually in the spaces. In front of you tonight and on the back table for anyone that's interested, this is the latest magazine that we are in, and there's some on the back table. And we'll talk a lot more about the Art Week schedule that's coming up. But if you don't mind, I'm just going to quickly run through some of the questions I was asked. Forgive me, I know that Erica was just on there, but this is Erica Strezpak, who's responsible for really doing a great job over there and moving us forward. So,
thank you.
The first slide shows the projected income source. This would be based on next year. So there are 28 studios, and that monthly revenue is $8,400. The portable wing, we are anticipating about $1,000 from. The shop in the basement, he was at $500. As you know, you voted to increase that to $750 a month. The library, auditorium, cafeteria, courtyard space, we said we would bring in $300. Clearly, that's one of the areas we'd like to move and bringing more revenue in. The art room, again, another area that we can expand. The gym, we estimated at $200 that we're bringing in, and the museum pays $500 a month, bringing the monthly revenue at $11,250, which would come out yearly, if my math is right, to $149,180.
Carolyn, does that include the 2 portables that you just rented?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not. They have not signed yet, so we did not include that.
And there's no number on there for cafeteria yet?
The cafeteria, we just put that broad number in a small number in the $300, so that if we rented it only 3 times in a month, that's what we would bring in.
Right. So the bulk of this revenue is from the classrooms?
That is correct. Currently, we have room to grow, and that's the second part of us.
Thank you.
So I know that one of the areas people were concerned with was about the spending. So this is, again, the anticipated budget that we have, will be putting forward. So the salaries would be at 16.4%. As you know, that's not a full-time person. That would include 2 part-time people. We have Erica, and then we would like to expand and have another part-time person so that we could get more revenue for those rooms and things that we need a person to be at in the evenings. The custodian, again, there is 1 custodian currently working there 19 hours a week. This would include another custodian, another 19-hour or two 10 hours, whatever Sean felt was best, but he gave us that numbers to better cover the building and keep the cleanliness and things up to code. So the utilities come in at 23.9%. The insurance for that building is at 6.1%. I know the numbers are to the side if you'd like me to read them, but I'm sure you can all do that. The water is at 0.4%. The supplies and maintenance and repairs to the building, these numbers are from Sean Libby, who couldn't be here with us tonight, 17.4%. And then we've included in the budget going forward for next year the future large capital items. A boiler might break, so we need to be putting some money aside for that building. As you know, when it was given to the town, there was some deferred maintenance, so we're catching up and making up for some of the things that were not readily fixed. So I apologize for the photo. Sean got this to me today, but this is, I think, what you were hoping to hear. This is from the article that was from the Article 11 of 2016, and this is how that money was spent. The town was 125, so you can see that we spent 124,996. Whoa, we're pretty good on our budget, aren't we? And that would include things like the sprinkler system, the electrical, painting. There's ATC, which is the heating and air conditioning. Well, there's no air conditioning. The heating system and ventilation systems in there. So this is a breakdown, and I thank Kim, who got this ready for us too, and Sean from the Highway Department. So that shows you how we spent it in 16. And then again, the next slide would be on 17, where we are now. And this is of the money that the town voted in the budget. So this was the 125. So we're currently at 96. And again, it pays for similar things as it did the year before. It's paying for our alarm system, the sprinkler system. It's paying for a water department. It's paying for some paint and the boiler system. So I just wanted to give you a breakdown of where we were, what we spent it on, how close we came. And then the next one is just the draft cultural center budget. It's just exactly what I talked about. I always like a graph. I'm a more visual learner. So this breaks down what we would spend on salaries, and which is the 16.4%, the custodial salaries. The utilities come in at 23.9%, the insurance. So these are all the things that we talked about, just the pie graph, so you could see it a little better. So the income that was generated, the recreation side of the house brought in $1,540. And this is as of March 2018, and I did verify these numbers with the Chief Financial Officer, Carol Capola, who has been very helpful. We had a balance coming forward from the revolving fund from last year of $27,680. And the current cultural center building use, that's as of March, we're at $83,725, and I just totaled them up, so we're at $112,945. So that's the part of the financial, and I don't know if you want to just talk about that and then go into the future, or if you'd like to see the rest, totally up to you. We'd like to make it as...
We'll go to questions on financial.
Sure.
First I'd like to just tell the new people that are here tonight and anyone that hasn't followed this, this was a building that had 2 years' worth of middle school repurpose committees, and both of those committees basically deadlocked. They wanted to go for more ideas. The only offer we had on the building with an RFP process, year one, the only offer we got on the building was roughly $650,000 for 6 acres and this building, which we still owed $235,000-ish for the roof that we put on it, which we're still paying for the roof today. So $650,000, 6 acres of land in this building was the only offer we got, and we, at that point, decided to try and come up with other uses. The offer that was out there was for 65 housing units. It was a 40B project, similar to the one in Yarmouth across from the State Police Barracks, from a company called Stratford Capital. That was the only real serious offer we got on the building. The board talked about it. We had several people in the community wanted to go the cultural center route. I really have to give Carolyn the credit. Carolyn took our little bit of direction and really broadened that. We've had our first round of, as you just saw in the presentation, we had our first round of increases. So we started this at a much lower rate. We had our first round of rate increases based on popularity and based on what we knew we could get. We wanted to keep it affordable for the artists and bring people to the community, but we do recognize that we don't want to drain people's pockets and come up with another drain on the community. So we did vote to have a price increase on the rooms after the first year. Since then, we've had another local business rent both portables. I believe the plan is they want to pay for a year in advance anyway and do some repairs to the portables. But Carolyn continues to come up with ideas and continues to book the larger spaces. And as this has grown, we've had more people interested in the library upstairs. We have reached out to some culinary institutes and maybe be able to do something in the cafeteria. The gymnasium is being used by our rec department, as you saw. But we're really trying to make good use of the space and generate enough money to at least cover the costs while we do it. In the middle school repurpose committee, I was on the second year of that. There was a lot of concern from residents on the sharing of the driveway with the elementary school and turning this into a housing unit based on the proximity to the elementary school and the playground. So I'll open it up to questions on finances from the board. Thank you. Larry?
Thank you for the presentation. I came into this skeptical of the cultural center, as everyone knows. And partly because I was hoping for, with our need for affordable housing, we'd look at that for affordable housing. I agree with Mike, 61 units was way more than what I was comfortable with, but always looking for housing. But Carolyn, you've done a great job of moving me in a positive direction.
Oh, my goodness. Sorry. That's great to hear.
I do have a couple questions.
Of course.
Well, because it's moving that way. You know, we're now showing a net deficit, if I read here, of $80,000, basically. That's manageable with the resources helping the town do a lot of things. And I'm with Michael. I think we can move this ahead as part of a whole economic development activity, especially with some of the things that's going on with the Tucket Harbor and tied into the artist shacks, for instance. I think the cafeteria, haven't even touched on that, of having a licensed cafeteria that we can rent out.
Yes.
These questions are probably more for Chris and for you, Carolyn. But the 23,000 you show on sewer, right? Do you happen to know the split, how that split with the school?
50-50.
This is our portion. what
Yeah,
shows
this
as
is
our
just our
portion.
share.
Oh, yeah, I got that. I just wondered overall, so
50-50.
50/50.
And where Larry's going with that is there's a joint
Okay.
septic system between the elementary school and that middle school building. There's a treatment facility in the middle of it. The cost to the town was about 44,000 shared with the school. It's now 46,000 based on these numbers, and we split it 50/50 with Monomoy Regional
Yeah.
School.
I don't want to be cynical, I just want to be sure we're getting
Yep.
a fair share.
Just want to clarify.
Okay. And I appreciate the putting money away for large capital items. Have you started developing a plan to put that into the capital outlay plan so that we don't get caught with this discussion of why it's coming up at the end?
Yeah, just on that, you know, one of the things that we're looking for is some direction from the board. Initially, it was, let's explore this concept, let's see what kind of revenue we can generate, and a 2-year time horizon was generated. I think we're coming up on a year into that, so we only have a year left. And one of the things is, you know, it's hard for me to say to Sean Libby, our facility maintenance, do a 5 or 10-year plan when he only has a 2-year time horizon. So one of the things, and I know it's on the agenda, is to look for, can we get a 3 to 5 year time horizon, and then he will start to populate the capital plan. The other thing that he will do is, if the Greens community gets voted at town meeting and we have accessibility of funds, he will start to do some work utilizing those funds, the Green Community State grants, if you would, to start doing boilers and windows, and you could see that was his idea about putting money aside for roof repair or other larger repair. So we are thinking that the board will think 3 to 5 years, and then we can put together more of a robust capital plan to keep going on this concept.
Procedurally, how are you setting that aside? Is that, you have an enterprise fund, how are you setting aside the money for future capital?
Well, actually, the way this has been structured, initially, the first couple of years, we did 125,000 really as out of free cash each year to subsidize the operation, to kind of have us be sustainable. 2 years ago, we went to town meeting and asked for a revolving fund. A year ago or 2 years ago.
So this goes into revolving fund then?
And now this revolving fund is the one that has 112,000 in there, and that would roll over year to year.
Okay. And Carolyn, I appreciate the, you know, adding expense for custodial facility, that type of stuff. Is that cost plus DPW time or just cost?
I believe that the number Sean gave me, and I will verify for you, but I believe that was just cost, not time and cost. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
just
Could you
the
verify
salary,
that?
yeah, I can verify it right now.
and-
Just the salaries that we have are really for Erica and we have a custodial services.
Okay.
So Sean's time, Carolyn's time
My
has
request
not
would be
been
then that
sectioned off.
that you show cost plus time, so we know what the true expense to the town is. It's
Yep.
just not the cost.
Sean did provide a breakdown of labor, to me at least, and I know it was forwarded through the town email system,
Okay.
so.
I'd like to see that, so it's a full document. But thanks again. Good job.
Thank you, thank you.
Julie?
Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation and for all of your hard work. You both have done an amazing job, and, you know, I attended a concert there back in March, and it was fantastic, and I think that it really adds a lot of value to the town in a way that we can't necessarily measure, so I appreciate it. I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Janelle?
I also feel the same way, but I just want to point out that your numbers are so conservative for the library, auditorium, cafeteria, art room, gym. And I want people to understand how conservative those numbers are. And you've also added in the 2 extra positions, the other part-time person and the other part-time custodian. So really, it's not an $80,000 deficit.
Correct.
Correct. Even though it looks like that, if someone were to look at the numbers, it's really not, because these conservative numbers are just that.
Very
Very
conservative.
conservative.
Very,
$100 for in a month is just, you know, I'm sure you make that in a week.
Well, let me
If-
say
and
that the
especially if
numbers are
you
the numbers. You can have an optimistic and conservative listing then to show, but, yeah.
But I think, though, that, you know, you can't project. We can tell what the extra salaries of the other part-time person and the other custodian are going to be, and put that in, but I think we should bump the numbers up of the monthly revenue. If we have those 2 extra workers there, the monthly revenue is certainly going to go up.
correct.
So I just wanted to point that out to the general public who maybe missed your presentation and didn't understand, and just that it's really not an $80,000 deficit, and awesome.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And I'm ready to make a motion whenever you guys are ready.
Don?
Can I say
To
something
extend
first?
it. Go.
Again, I appreciate everything you did, and I got into this later in the game, but I'm tempted to declare a national holiday that Larry has got an appointment. Of being in favor of at least the concept. But there's two sides to a balance sheet. And with due respect to Larry, this building suffered from benign neglect, and we were literally dragging it downhill to the point where zero was way north of where we were. I mean, they had to put a lot of money into this place. There was mold. They didn't open the doors or windows. I mean, it was almost like we were willingly trying to drag the thing into the ground. I believe there's a value in any community to having the ability to make room for culture, to make room for history, to make room for recreation and open space. And this fits in with that. We had the building. We're not building a building. We're going to be paying for that septic system if this thing was empty. And I would argue that we were neglectful because we should have been allocating money to keep that place buttoned down in the shape it was when we closed it, but we didn't. I mean, it literally was going downhill. Having said that, my counterpoint to you, Larry, is that while I understand the ideas of cost centers and profit centers and everything, the moment we budget for the Selectmen Administrator's Office to amortize the cost of the DPW to do stuff for us, like the parking lot, because Michael said this in the past, we're a town. We own things as a town. We are not set up to allocate costs so that we cross-bill. The fire department's going to charge the DPW for the possibility of a future fire, or the DPW charging them to plow their driveways. To the extent that this thing covers its own expenses, I'm satisfied with that, and I don't need to feel that we've got to lather on overhead costs from another department within town to add on to salaries.
Want to do that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I also wanted to just reiterate for people, and then also let people know who may not know, that Harwich is the only town that the Mass Cultural Council chose in the entire Commonwealth. They chose, I think it was 4 or 5 cities, but Harwich is the only town that they chose to have a liaison with, which means that we have been designated a cultural district. So that allows us to apply for grant monies, and it also will increase their advertising for us, driving tourism, and again with the chamber, having their magazine feature the cultural center this year. I really feel like now is the time, Mr. Chair, that I would like to make a motion that we extend the 2-year trial period another 5 years, so 6 years from now, end it.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to extend the 2-year trial period to an additional 5 years. Discussion. Larry?
Not to debate Don forever, because we're probably never going to agree on this, but my counterpoint, if you will, is information is good. We make decisions on a lot of things going on in town and setting priorities. It's just not the cultural center. There could be other buildings that we decide that it's not worth the effort when we have the true expenses to do work with, or some activity. And so I'm always looking forward to knowing what the expenses are in addition to the other, because I think that's part of our duty to understand and how to make best decisions.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? You know, to me, this makes a lot of sense, because you can then plan. We can tell the tenants that we're going to be there. We can tell the Culinary Institute that we actually have some time to move in there. That's been one of the biggest complaints.
Correct.
Can you tell me how many people are on a waiting list for what's already rented,
Sure can.
roughly?
Yep, the waiting list currently has 18. We have that.
18 on a waiting list for classrooms.
For 28, right?
For 28, yes, there are 28.
There's a specific,
Some people need Northern Lights, some people, but there are 18 currently listed that we have been in touch with.
Right, and this will allow you to reach out for grants and get free money.
Absolutely.
Great.
Sure.
If there is such a thing.
Don't use free money as a term.
Ed McManus, I just want to applaud you for considering taking a yes vote on this motion you have. I know the Cranberry Festival, we've been done a couple of concerts at the community center, and we are working with Erica and Carolyn to do a summer concert series there. Having this sort of security or forward-looking plan, where one of the things we're doing, we're looking at doing the concert series in the courtyard. It's a little rough. We've attracted a local landscaping firm he's putting together a plan which he'll bring to you and offer to donate his services to sort of put it in better shape for that series this summer. I think he'll be glad to know that it's not just a one-year thing that he's doing, but it will carry on. Also, from the Cranberry Festival's point of view, we've been able to, now that we are sort of cooperating with the town on the use of the facility, it's opened up a series of different grants that we can apply for. One's a New England Cultural Council grant, which will help fund the artists that we're bringing in this summer. And then there's a Mass Cultural Council grant, which we'll be applying for. And I think it just will benefit our organization and many other organizations who want to make use of it. As you know, what we try and do is run musical performances, and we charge a ticket price. In this case, we're trying to keep that ticket price very low, so it's affordable to a lot of folks, but we do hope to make a little bit of profit, which we in turn then turn into our scholarship account to provide for scholarships for our students graduating from Cape Tech and from Monomoy Regional High School. So I think this is a great plan that you're about ready to vote for, I hope. And I congratulate you.
Thank you.
Before you do take that vote, I just wanted to let everyone know that this weekend there has been a New England, a Discover New England conference down in Falmouth. It is an international tour operators conference. With this extension, it will help us. I've already heard from many of them that are past clients of mine that they are interested in the arts and are very excited. So if you do vote for this, now the extension, this will give our hotels, our restaurants, and our shops more people coming into town as well that will be supporting this wonderful cultural center. So thank you.
Thank you. I know we're ready to vote on this. The last thing I want to mention is we have the new organization that's forming, Friends of the Harwich Cultural Center, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And they are volunteering their time free of charge to help clean, to do events, to maintain the building.
And
correct?
help in so many different ways.
Fundraising.
Yes.
As well.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
they are both inside people who are part of the building and open to people who are not currently utilizing the building but believe in the concept of the cultural center.
More town volunteers.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And we can always use more. They can always use more.
I'll call for a vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you.
Thanks. Do
So
you mind if I
let's
just...
move on to the next piece.
Okay, but before we move on, do you mind if I just quickly go through, because this has been a huge
go ahead.
project. The Art Week, you don't want to miss this. So we are, and I'll go through it quickly. This is the first time Harwich has participated. Erica has done really an unbelievable job. She has gotten us recognized on the website for all of Massachusetts. There are, if you go to that website, you will see that there are like 5 different categories, and Harwich Cultural Center is featured in 4 of them, 3 or 4 of them, right on the publication. One of the things that happened is that we, out of 500 people who tried to be part of the partnership. They picked 20 to be on their advertisement for rolling billboards that are rolling throughout Massachusetts. And one of our local artists, who happens to be here, was chosen with Erica's help. We submitted that. So we are one of 20 of the billboards that will be rolling around all of Massachusetts, everywhere. So Harwich Cultural Center will be all over the roadways.
Is this like the Wienermobile?
It's the digital billboards that will be like, 128, 93, so that's quite exciting for us.
Great.
Right. The next thing is that we will be participating in Light Up the Night, and we thank the department, the highway department, and especially facilities, who made our Art Week sign, which will be lit up. And I'm going to put in a plug. If people have any candles, the battery operated ones, if they'd like to drop those off, because we would love to light up that building. We're featured, this building, on the same page as the Zachem Bridge, so we're in some pretty big company, so we'd really like to light it up. So we're happy to take donations. You can drop them off at the community center or cultural center. Another thing that we are doing is we have put together our own schedule, which you all have in front of you, which is 5 days or 10 days total of programs, and we have our artists participating. They're going to be doing demonstrations. It's free. We have an open house. There are music concerts. There is so much. It's on our website. You really don't want to miss all of the events that are coming up, which is another reason it's great that you support it, because we can only grow from here. So the last, the partnerships and press, we just listed some of the people who've utilized the building, and in front of you is one of the binders of all of the ads and articles that have been written positive, I must say, and we're so grateful to our partnership with the local newspapers, who have been very, very supportive. So, did I miss anything? So that's it. Thank you for letting me put that in. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you for your excitement.
I am excited. I am. Okay, now, you'd like to go to,
Creation of the Labyrinth?
the Labyrinth.
Labyrinth.
Okay, so, as you know, I'm not an expert, not even close to that subject, but we are fortunate that we have someone in the building who is, so if you don't mind, I'm going to invite Robin. I'm going to have her give my chair so she can speak right into the microphone. Oh, sit right next to me.
Thank you.
No, I do like that. So this is Lorinda, and Lorinda has a studio in the building. So I know that we had brought before you the idea of a labyrinth walk. And I know that you wanted to do a little research, and I sent you some information, some of the schools that are currently using them. UMass was one of them. So I know that there were some letters sent to you as well. I had some other photographs with Jamie's camera. I don't know if she can get them, of some that were done. So we're back in front of you to answer any questions, and I don't know if Lorinda would like to just give you a quick update, if that's okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, I would like that. Thank you,
Thank
Carolyn.
you.
It's nice to meet everybody face to face. I've seen many of the videos. I'm also a Harwich resident, and I'm also a trained Labyrinth facilitator. And I'd like to just read a very short paragraph of a very vanilla description of what labyrinths are used for. So I personally see the labyrinth as an experiential resource in any community, whether it's in a hospital, a school system, or in somebody's backyard. There's something called the labyrinth locator, and many people have labyrinths in their backyard that list them there and open them to the public as a resource for people to center, to experience mindfulness in this world where we have so much activity coming at us. And one of the things I love about the proposal that Donald Moore put together is he had the vision of creating a peace garden along with this labyrinth as a community resource, as well as a resource for the renters at the cultural center. Many people will, when they're on vacation, will look to the labyrinth locator to see where there's a labyrinth located. So how wonderful to be able to attract tourists coming in where they come and do something for free, but in addition, they might stop at the farmer's market, they may have lunch in town, they may go into Harwich Port and explore the retail shops there. So with that said, I will read my paragraph. The labyrinth is an ancient circular pattern found in many cultures, and it dates back to over 5,000 years. That says a lot, that it's lasted 5,000 years. Walking the labyrinth quiets the mind, opens the heart, and grounds the body. It is a single winding path that provides a meditative walk to the center and out again. It is not a maze. The term circuit refers to the number of times the path goes around the center. Labyrinths are used in many ways to encourage meditation and self-reflection and to reduce stress. And as I mentioned, hospitals, cancer treatment centers, and of course churches provide them to help people innately find peace and allow for the healing process to occur. Sometimes in a healing garden center, these are open to all people as a non-denominational, cross-cultural blueprint for well-being. Another thing that I do in the community, and I also work with clients worldwide using Skype, is I'm a holistic healing arts practitioner. And I have found many people will say to me, I can't meditate. I can't sit and meditate. And one of the things I prescribe often is to walk a labyrinth, or to walk backwards if they don't have a labyrinth in their community. One of my clients, actually, who was the one who would say to me, please help me learn how to breathe. I'm doing a triathlon, and I just panic in the water. And so in the process of talking about meditation, she now has a twin labyrinth in her backyard in Staten Island and has opened it up to the community and reads exactly what I just read. And then there's a way to walk the labyrinth. So I must say that I feel so proud and so thankful to the fact that we have this cultural center in our community of Harwich. And I'm just so thankful to have my space there. And I look forward to contributing and bringing more culture in a diverse way to the town of Harwich. And I am hopeful that you will see my viewpoint and vote on this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to open it up to questions from the board. I'm going to start with Janelle. This has been before us before we agreed to bring it back. The board did agree to explore them, so they had a little more self-knowledge coming into tonight. Janelle?
So the last time when you presented, Carolyn, you were talking about, I think you said there were a couple of faith-based communities in town who were wanting to donate. And so my thing is just making sure that there's a separation of church and state, because I think that's really important. If we open it up to this is a religious thing, many different sectors of religion can come forward and say, well, you know what, I want a garden there. I want something, I want a whatever, I want a pentacle garden, or, you know. So I think it's really important to keep those things separate. And I did read that Chatham's was actually donated by the Chatham Clerical Association, was it?
Right.
That's interesting to me. But I do feel like if and I'm not even going to be on the board much longer, so my point might not even matter. But at this point, I just feel like there should be a clear separation between church and state. So not bringing in any type of religious denomination, religious kind of, feeling toward it, and keeping it much more of a mindful experience. That being said, I'm a little concerned about the placement of it. I think it's too big for the front yard. My hope is that the farmer's market is going to go over there, because I think where it is deathly. That corner on Sisson is just not conducive.
we can't grow the farmer's market in that location, in my opinion. And I also think with the cultural compact that we've created with the state, this facility is going to grow. So I feel like we need to keep that front field a little bit more vacant, and also we're probably going to end up having parking issues down the road. So I think we'll have to readdress the parking situation. It's still a driveway for the elementary school, twice a day at least. So my thought is, I have a solution, because that's my thing. If I think, you know, something should be different, I have the solution. In the back, next to the Little League fields, there's a nice expanse of not so great grass right now. And it's inside the chain link fence that has a gate, and it's adjacent to the side parking lot. And I think that would be the perfect spot. And it also, because the proposal talks a lot, especially in the latter part of the proposal, about utilizing this particular labyrinth, I think, for outdoor classrooms and students. There's a lot of education. And I think that having it actually be much closer to their playground would make it more, they'd be able to utilize it better. So I'd just like to consider that. And that's the only two things that I thought. Otherwise, I think it's a great idea. I just think the placement of it and making sure that we don't, promote any type of religious aspect of it.
Thank
And
you.
If I can, I don't actually know the answer to that question, Janelle, because I don't know who owns those fields, if they are part of the towns or, so I would be happy to look into it, but I don't know the answer right now to give that to you, so.
Thank you. As far as the religious piece of this goes, we're pretty certain that this isn't.
Right, not ever what we
Yeah,
want.
my understanding when I saw the tape of the meeting was that that was used as an example
Okay.
of
Chatham.
what Chatham did.
Right.
But that was never a part of the intention. I know when Don and I got together, I was involved in the proposal and overseeing the drawing. We were actually envisioning going out to the greater community and looking for resources from that point of view. We never talked about church funding at all.
Thank you. Don?
Actually, by extension of that, that was going to be my comment. My wife used to do healing touch. I mean, when I had my hip done, I chose to do Reiki rather than opioids. As far as I'm concerned, if you look at this in a religious way, rather than being a restrictive thought, I think in terms of Judeo-Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, all sorts of religions deal with tenets of inner peace and harmony. You're not really invoking anybody by doing that. I don't know, I mean, Janelle's got a point about parking to a certain degree, although I've lived here a long time and I found that very little is permanent forever in terms of where you put something. It may be that the farmer's market could go in the back. It may be that the farmer's market does go in the front and you can look at the back. But in terms of whether or not we actually are sponsoring something like nasty, at a certain point in time, if you get hostile to everything because it could be construed as spiritual, you're not going to have anything. It's just all going to be secular. I have no problem with the Labyrinth in general. And anything that would promote more harmony throughout the community is a good thing.
Thank you, Don. Julie?
I think it's a great idea, and to me, the cultural center is a great spot for it because, peace should be a cultural entity. So ultimately, I don't know about the exact placement. I'm open to whatever works best, but I think it's a wonderful contribution, and I think that ultimately we could all benefit from some peace.
Why are you looking at me?
Next up.
Larry?
I gather from your, the gist is you're going to be raising money for this, for donors to cover the cost.
Sure, asking for donations. After the first meeting, we did have people reach out.
Right,
who were-
and that would cover maintenance as well.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question. Are you concerned about vandalism on something like this? Do people find it interesting to try to tear it up?
Where's the police station to go?
Well, but you're in the open field. Yeah,
Go
I can
ahead,
see
let Carolyn answer.
I did try and look into that, and I will say that Chatham had nothing to report. They said certainly people have utilized theirs, and I checked with the one on UMass grounds, and which is student-based, so I thought maybe nothing has happened, and they report that it's utilized quite a bit, and people use it in all different ways. There's probably a very correct way, and then there's probably my way, where I just need a minute to just walk, and I think people will utilize it in very different ways, and if you saw the pictures, I don't know, I guess you can vandalize anything,
That's okay.
so I'm
You've
not even
answered the
gonna go.
question.
Yes.
You all set, Larry?
Yeah, I am.
So I'd like to also explore position. I think tonight we can take a vote to support it, and then let you guys explore position. It either works back there or it doesn't work back there. And later in the agenda, we have who owns the back.
Oh.
So, Chris?
I do think, just from a process perspective, it probably would be best to raise the funds, establish the location, and then offer it to the town in the form of a gift.
Correct.
And then by acceptance of a gift, then it becomes a town asset. And if there is concern about vandalism or whatever, that you could always donate funds for maintenance of it if something were to happen. But I think approving the concept and having them come back with a formal gift that the board can accept probably makes some sense from a legal perspective.
And a recommendation on citing?
So let's, can I get a motion to support the concept?
I'd like to make a motion that we support the concept and that it would come back after the funding with a recommendation for where the siting might be.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Larry.
Next on the agenda is, somebody sent a letter in, an email in through the town website to the town administrator requesting that our policy on dog time on the beaches changes. Right now, it's Memorial Day to Labor Day. In his letter, he cited 5 other towns that either go from May 1st until October 1st to 15th. Without a request from a member of the board, I'm not interested at all in changing our current policy. So, Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everything old is new again. I remember dealing this with in 2000 or 2001. All I can say is, I agree with Michael. I don't want to revisit this. I got myself in a little trouble before, but I will say again, the people who don't care about rules are going to disregard whatever date you put on there, and they're going to put things into that sand, regardless of our rules, that are bad. The people who do care about rules and who do clean up after themselves and do care about walking around the beach in a clean way are going to follow the rules. So, I mean, you can keep ruling this thing up, but eventually it does break out that way. People who don't care aren't going to care whether we change this date or not.
Janelle?
Well, I'm not against talking about it. I have a dog. Now, see, Chatham has at least one beach where you can bring a dog year-round. I would almost support something like that, where it's not the same for every single beach in Harwich. I don't have a proposition right now, but I would not be opposed to that type of conversation, because there are many, many dog owners, and I think that even banning them from the summer months is kind of not fair. So, you know, I guess, you know, I would entertain the idea of making at least one beach in Harwich year-round dog-friendly, and the others maybe going to October to appease this particular citizen. I don't know.
I just want to highlight, we've had one complaint, and there seems not to be a problem. And if we change it, we're just changing something to change it for one person. If we had as many people in here tonight that were here for the crematorium, then we really should have the conversation. But in my mind, until we get multiple people that want to talk about changing the dog regulations, then we're just changing them to change them. That's
Agreed.
my own
Agreed.
opinion. Julie?
No, I would concur with that. I don't have any need to discuss it.
Larry?
Interestingly, in the past, the argument, Don has his, we'll have our stories on dogs because they come up periodically. The discussion was not so much on the beaches. One time there was concern about being in the parking lot walking.
Oh, yeah.
People do walk their dogs, and to ban them from the parking lot during the summer and the beach was overstepping. Once that was solved, Mike was had one concern. There wasn't a lot of concern after that. Additionally, rules aren't the problem. Is we don't have the legal manpower to enforce the rules, and so if we want to do anything, I would suggest we stick with we are and see if we can enforce them better. But I would not do anything right now.
So my recommendation to the board would be no action.
Yeah.
Unless somebody has an action they want to put forward, then we'll move on to the next item.
No, I don't.
All set.
All set? Thank you. Grant writing, training at Sagamore Beach. Chris, this just was another one that was based off of an email that I received, and it was a session in Bourne, I think put together by the Bourne Fire Department to explore grant opportunities, how to write them, how to look for them. And my question to you is, do we have anyone going? And if so, who? And if not, why not?
I could bring it up tomorrow at department heads. I don't have anyone specific that is assigned to go to this. Mr. Chairman, there are an awful lot of these private sector outfits that do grant writing. I do happen to think that we have a talented group of people. I mean, John Rendon has obtained more than $2 million worth of grants. Fire has done effective with grants. I will bring it up and see if there are any department heads that have an interest in doing it. We don't have a paid position specifically as grant writer. So it would be something that if someone wanted to try to refine those skills and go, certainly that's something that we could look at. But there are a lot of these private sector outfits that offer these services. I've been to some over the years. Some are valuable, some aren't so valuable. It kind of depends.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do note when I was looking at it that this is a .com. It's not a .org, not a .edu. And interestingly, based on discussions we've had for the last 9 months, I'd be far more interested in seeing whether the county could come together with some sort of confab to work with them, or even take over some of the more mundane grant writing, because we've been casting about to try to find things that we shouldn't be redundant on. This is like a great place to start.
Janelle?
I don't really have anything at this time. I know that Suffolk, the program that they have for municipal workers, they offer a grant writing class. I think Robin Kelly's taking it right now. So I would just encourage more people to take advantage of that every year as well.
Okay, I'm going to finish with the board real quick. Julie?
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think whatever the county can do for us, and if there's a better program, then we should look at that.
Don? Larry?
Whoever I am.
The other Don.
The other Don?
The other Don.
Don's opponent?
Well, I think we've approached this subject a couple times in the past, because we have people who really do a good job. John is one that Chris mentions. My concern is, however, is not a top priority, because they're running departments, they're doing a lot of other activities. And I would like to see us explore, not tonight, but explore a long-term strategy. Can we decide specifically what the county can do in terms of grant writing? Should we be looking to partner with some neighboring towns, Chatham and Orleans, and maybe muscle up and get 2 or 3 towns that we would all contribute to hire a full-time grant writer for these towns? Because it's more than just writing grants. So someone's got to explore all the paperwork, what grants are available. Because I know in the past year, I've had potential grants come to my attention that we get one day before they're due.
Right.
And as you know, if you're for a consulting firm, you have people watching all the Federal Register, all the things going on. So it's not, the grant writing is the end part. We need staff, and it's either, I would like to bring this back after town meetings, strategy on, what can we do specifically to address going after grants.
Okay. Ed?
Ed McManus, I'm a represent the town at the Assembly of Delegates. Barnstable County has an Office of Resource Development, which is specifically tasked with monitoring and applying for grants. They work with a whole range of organizations in the county and would be more than willing to sit down and chat with any of our department heads or staff who were interested in looking for grants in a specific area. They're very good at what they do, and they are probably, from the town's perspective, an underutilized resource of the county. And I, throw that out. And then just from a historical perspective, the town at one point did have a grant writer. It was back in the late 70s. He was hired under what was called the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act, CETA. I don't know if any of you remember that. I was a trainer in that program out in California, but he spent 6 months down there before taking a job in Provincetown. His name is Mark Forrest. He keeps on telling everybody his first job in government was in Provincetown. It was actually in the basement under the under the administrator's office.
Thank you, Ed. So what I took out of this is Larry's going to write a long-term strategy, and Don and Julie are going to explore what the county has to offer. Does that sound?
You got that right.
Julie was going to write a grant for that.
All right. So any information we can start to gather, and to Larry's point, we'll bring it back. I know there was a couple emails that I sent of grants that I found that Foster actually applied for one for IT, and we got $30,000, I believe, out of that. So there's been a couple that I found and sent that we've applied for and we've gotten. So I have to assume there's a lot more out there. All right, the next up is additions to the annual town meeting warrant after the selectmen approved and signed. I'm going to start, there's two things that were added to the warrant by administration after we signed the warrant, voted and assigned the warrant. The first one, I'm going to let Don take the lead on, and it just explained the meeting that he was involved in and what that was. I learned about it after the fact. I was not involved in the meeting, but Don was there, town clerk was there, Chris was there, I believe, John Giorgio was involved, our town council. So Don, will you just give us an overview so the public knows what's going on?
Yeah, and Sandy Hall was there as the vice chair of the Charter Review Committee. There was a letter that was put in the front of this, and the discussion centered around, how it got there, but also the fact, and I'm pretty hot about this, council apparently just awakened and decided that we absolutely had to mail out a letter notifying people if we were going to go to the ballot. I had pointed out to John Giorgio, who was our KP law representative at the time, that corporately we've contracted with them for over 20 years, both Koppelman and Page and its successor. I made it real clear that nobody takes direction from legal counsel. They solicit advice from them and counsel. And I am convinced, because I had this tussle a few years ago with Lauren Goldberg, that it was, and successively there was an email from her. She's the principal of KP Law now, where she has a real strong feeling that this should go to the general court, which excuses you from doing all this stuff. I was a little concerned because, well, first of all, we got away from mailing warrants, and we used to do that. So had it been in there last year, and the ballot had been in there, and we mailed it, none of this would be a discussion. But the end of the email essentially said, after we've gone through this whole thing, it really doesn't matter, because if nobody says anything about it, it's okay. And I'm curious about the motivation, because I asked them specifically, who asked you to do this? And all I got was a year look at this. Like, well, I just saw that you weren't doing this. It was like, where have they been the other 19 years? There was a strong commitment to get back to the original concept of the charter, where the townspeople were on the bus together, where they passed it with a 2/3 majority, because it shouldn't be simple to change our Constitution. And then they got an opportunity in the successive year to go to the ballot. If you go to the general court, it's a simple majority, and it can be rewritten by the legislature for the other 350 towns and municipalities that aren't representing us specifically. because there are 351 of them. I personally got no good answer from that, and I get back to my original thought, which is we don't take instruction from it, and the other issue you're going to handle later, but we don't take instruction, and if it were, it would be to us to say, you need this letter, and then we could have threshed it out. It just showed up, and I don't feel that if this, and I've pointed out again to him in that meeting, and it's germane to the point, when we're talking about other things of representation that KP Law does, that when we got to the failure to elect on the Housing Authority, they gave different advice to some of the municipalities on Cape Cod because they have different counsel within KP Law. I mean, which advice is the right advice?
Can we rein this back in, Don, just to the topic, not what the lawyer shouldn't be doing?
Okay, but the topic is that nobody asked them to do it. It was just inserted, and there was no real good reason for why it was inserted, and it clearly said at the end of the day it's not that big a deal, because if somebody did say that, you could put it on a ballot next year anyway.
Okay, can you explain just to the public real quick what the letter is and what we're talking about?
It points out that there was actions taken in the prior town meeting that resulted in the amending of the charter. In this case, they were pretty small. They just took out the terms for various committees, and we're going to insert them this year in the bylaws, which I was part of. And I, as the chair of the Charter Review Committee that year, was never given that advice that there was going to have to be a letter. And it was a crisis that wasn't a crisis. It was a contrived crisis because it never got brought up until the 11th hour, where they said the only solution we can come up with is putting it in a warrant this year.
So in your opinion, Sandy Halls, as the vice chair of the Charter Review, the town clerk, town administrator, and the attorney, do we have a problem with this being in the warrant?
We were not, none of the three of us were happy that it got put in.
Chris?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you guys pay me to do the best I can and try to execute in a professional way. And in this circumstance, I would take full responsibility in terms of trying to put these two items in. I was advised by counsel. I was as disappointed as Don was why an action was taken last year, that it probably should have been mailed to the residents. It was not mailed to the residents. It should have been mailed to the residents this year. And I was concerned that you want to make sure, at least from a professional perspective, that we're not blatantly in violation of what we've been advised. So in terms of making sure that there was sufficient information, or at least trying to inform the general public, the intent of this is that there was a summary on the ballot of actions taken. And what this letter does is basically outline what those actions are in greater detail. So when an attorney advises me that we should be doing something, I take that very seriously. And it was my call. Sandy in the office and I had a discussion, and I said, well, why don't we put it in? I would rather be overly transparent than to not put it in and then be criticized that it wasn't put in. No attempt was made to educate folks. And what I should have done, and I do apologize for this, is I should have had the full material in and then circulated it to the board. And that did not happen. A lot of these decisions were made a week or two before things were finalized, and we're in a kind of a mad scramble to get things done. So I do apologize that we shouldn't, that I didn't get that to the board. And certainly in the future, we'll make sure I do. I've learned my lesson this year.
Thank you for that, Chris. Don?
Yeah, I'd just like to go a little bit further, because these were not part and parcel with each other, these two issues. And they are two. There's two things that got in. When we had that meeting, just to be real clear, I had not seen, nor had the other people who were at that meeting had seen, that there was that other letter from the Monomoy Regional School District also, which also got inserted after we signed the warrant. That got me pretty upset, because the opportunity existed to say, while we're on this subject, there's another thing that happened at the same time. So it would be a mischaracterization to say the two things. That meeting only handled one, and no one brought up that there was a second issue.
Thank you, Don. Janelle?
I'm going to wait until somebody else speaks.
Julie?
Well, I mean, in all honesty, I would prefer to have signed the final. Having said that, I can also, having read through the materials, we have an attorney given legal advice that we pay them to give, and, you know, in the sense of, I would have preferred to have received it to review prior to it going into the warrant, but I also have more of a problem with us having poor advice in the sense of the legal counsel, more than I have a problem ultimately in the decision to put it in there. So I don't know if that's a, you know, ambiguous response, but I feel both ways. I feel like we were given some bad advice. I feel we should have had the opportunity to review. I would have preferred to sign, as I said, the final, but ultimately I don't think that, you know, overall we have what we have, and I think if anything we can say that it was done to provide more information, not less.
Thank you, Julie. Larry?
Well, regarding the school there, I had two reactions.
Let me just, let me give you an overview of the school first, or the public an overview of the school before, if that's what you're gonna talk about.
That's what I'm gonna talk about.
Okay, so the school one,
Let me interrupt you though, because I think we didn't explain as well as we could an overview of the first letter that went in there. Maybe you can give that another shot.
Okay.
And then
They
go
are
to the
saying that there
schools.
was a section of Mass General Law that was enacted over 20 years ago that requires, notwithstanding the adoption of home rule charter, that you still need permission from the state in the following way. You need to have an exclamatory letter that goes out to all of the people who are voters in the town to be able to inform them properly that they have amended their own charter and that they're going to vote on their own charter. It seems crazy, but it's there, and it's been there for 20-some-odd years. It's the first I heard of it.
Okay.
Comfortable with that?
Yep.
So the next one that was brought to my attention was a letter pertaining to Article 5, the school budget. That the letter from the superintendent went into the warrant book after our vote. And basically what the person that called and complained said that it was campaigning. So the Office of Campaign and Finance was gonna take exception to this. So because of the allegation and because of the potential problem with the campaigning and the fact that the warrant was at the printer, I did obtain a legal opinion from John Giorgio, which is in the packet, and I also, he included Office of Campaign and Finance paperwork in there as well. In the front part, the exception that I take to this is in the front part of the letter, it says, "Thank you for your support." So number one, the article was changed to reference Appendix D, I believe it is, which is the letter from the superintendent. And the second part of it is the letter itself says, "Thank you for your support." As John Giorgio points out in the letter, it doesn't reference the ballot question. Therefore, his opinion is it's not campaigning, but more thanking the voters for support. I have to say, in this particular case, I take great exception to this, and I think John Giorgio is wrong. It's a one-sided letter. It's support, and I do support the schools, but this addition to the warrant, and I appreciate what Julie said, and Chris and I have discussed this, and he apologized, and I'm gonna accept his apology. However, my signature matters, my vote matters, and I'm an elected official, and that's our warrant. It's nobody else's warrant. So as far as being professional, as far as doing things on a slim timeline is not an excuse. It has to, whether we have to call an emergency board meeting, it has to come back before us. And we have a legal opinion, and the board can decide if the board wants to be okay with that legal opinion, because I think John did a fairly good job spelling it out. I will say I disagree with it. So we have a legal opinion. We have the paperwork from the Office of Campaign and Finance. The remedy for these things usually is a letter is written for the opposing side and then handed out at town meeting or added into warrant booklets, but to make sure that everyone at town meeting gets what the opposing side be or what the argument may be as to why this shouldn't be in there. So that's usually the remedy that they come up with. But I'm going to make this a board's decision on what the board wants to do. But The legal opinion spells out with cases and very, very detailed that our attorney does not think that it will be an issue. Done.
I understand Larry wanted to go, but I avoided commenting on this until this actually was the second subject. Having said that, I totally agree with the chair. My signature means something. When people vote, it means something. To change something by sliding a page in after it was signed is just wrong, number one. Number two, this could have been a handout. Everybody does that. At the town meeting, you come in, you get a handout. This is what we believe. By the way, we paid for the printing of this, not the Monomoy School District, so it could have been a handout. But the third and most disappointing part of this transcends the town itself. I'm tired of CYA memos. Do we want council representing us in the highest possible moral sense, or do we want them to crank out memos to rationalize how little we have to do to get away with stuff? And to that extent, I feel like that's one of these things. I mean, I'm going to give you the possibility of covering yourself because all you got to do is the minimum possible. And I'm not in for that.
I'm going to go back to Larry. I apologize for skipping over you, but I wanted to clarify what the letter was.
That's okay, because I'm in agreement with you two, so my comments are going to be brief. My first reaction was disagreement. John Giorgio, I think normally does a good job, but this time to define very narrowly that didn't apply because it isn't this the article number is, no one can buy that argument. That's trying to use legalese to get around around an issue, which we shouldn't be doing. And I was disturbed by I saw it clearly as a support letter, and it should be two-sided. We're all told we can't do that over and over again, and this comes in, which is the support letter. My second reaction was, and Chris, I know you're trying to get something done, but my second reaction is very negative because we talked tonight about all the things we throw back to town meeting. This is not one of them. Signing the warrant is ours. That's our decision. And so everything should be in there when we sign it. So that's all I have.
Julie?
Sorry for jumping the gun on that discussion initially.
No worries.
But, yeah, I mean, ultimately, our signatures do matter, and the point is that, the warrant is finalized by us. And so, in this case, it necessarily was not. And the other comment I would bring up is the person earlier tonight who brought up the idea that we should have the pro and the con in our articles, and I do think that's a good idea. I mean, when you're reading it and you may not be familiar with something, you should understand both sides. And, I obviously supported not putting this in, and I had my own vote in that sense, but having said that, every taxpayer should be educated when they're trying to make their decisions. So in future, I would like to see pro and con. I would also say we did get some advice that's on the line, to your point. I'm comfortable in saying we should move forward because I ultimately think that we are in good shape in that sense, but I would agree that I would have preferred a last-minute meeting or whatever. I would have preferred the information, so.
Janelle?
Yeah. I don't agree that this should have been put in the warrant at all. And if this letter had come before us for approval, I would have not approved it based on information in here that I think is misleading. Unfortunately, a couple weeks ago, I commented on a social media about some 7th grade children who did not get to go on this DC trip that Monomoy takes because of their financial, family's financial status. They were not able to afford it. And it created a hullabaloo on this page, and there was criticizing and negativity, and apparently this was talked about at this last school committee meeting, which I was unable to attend because I was volunteering at the school play that night. But in this letter, and in that thread, and also by the another school committee member, I was told that this trip is a school-supported but not school-funded. And yet, a layperson reading this letter would think that this is a school-funded trip. So that's just one little thing that I would have nitpicked. I think we need to fix this. Something needs to be done, that we write something that we stick into every single warrant. So I don't know,
The warrants have gone out, so if we vote something like that, it would be when they got their voter registration card, they got in a letter with the,
Right, they're handed.
explanation, they'd be handed it, yes.
Yes, I
In
think
my
we need to do that. Because this letter, to me, is, obviously I support the school system, and, you know, if anybody thinks that I don't, then that's crazy. I have 2 children in it, and I want the best for my children, and I volunteer. But this letter is misleading, in my opinion. So I think we need to rectify it somehow.
Don?
Yeah, to be clear, because, I mean, we're probably much more informed about this than the people out there who are listening to this. We voted to put a portion of that budget onto a debt exclusion, which makes it a ballot item. There is a ballot that's going out there, and it's clear that they're asking for your support, which is more than just the warrant article for the budget. So, and they changed the language of that warrant article to point you to the appendix item. That happened after we signed the warrant, too.
And I do want to be clear that there is language in here and that John put in. It doesn't reference the ballot question. So I want to make the public clear about that. The other thing I want to make clear before we decide to take any action is, we're not saying we don't support the school. This is about an addition to the warrant, and there's law in place about campaigning in a warrant. So it's not about whether this board supports the school or not, and anyone that hasn't heard that we support the school simply isn't listening.
There's no tech letter.
In my opinion, administration should draft a letter explaining how it ended up in the warrant and explaining that the position of the ballot article, and that explaining the other side of this. And really an apology that this was put in there without an opposing opinion, because it should never have entered the warrant. But it's a board call on what the board wants to do. Legal counsel is basically saying we don't have to do anything. But if I'm hearing Larry and Don correctly, and Janelle now correctly, we want to fix this, or attempt to fix it.
It's our warrant. We need to write it, not administration.
Don?
Don't look at me to write it. I think something has to be said. I'm not sure how far we go with this, because ultimately he's telling us that we can get away with this, which is not a satisfying thought. But by the same token, I think the redress that we have is the kind of advice we get. I mean, in the future, this isn't going to cut it.
Well, that's another subject.
Julie?
I mean, you know, I'm certainly not saying that, you know, ultimately it's not, I'm not saying that it's not our warrant and that our signatures don't matter. What I am saying is that we have an opinion here, and I'm not looking to provide the bare minimum, so I don't mean to express those thoughts. What I'm thinking is, and you know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm thinking at town meeting, we have this discussion, and all of these items that we've just discussed can be brought up and discussed, so that people understand that this is what you're voting for, or this is what you're voting for. It doesn't reference the ballot. Again, I guess this goes back to our voter education process, right? When you go to the ballot, you should understand what you're voting for. And so if you're at town meeting and you've gotten that description on both sides, then you've provided that information. I mean, to me, at that point, I'm afraid that we end up just causing mass confusion. That's just my opinion. I'm happy to support whatever is best for the taxpayers, but I also don't want to confuse the issues. So,
Larry?
With the time we have left in getting the letter out, I think maybe discussion on town meeting floor makes the most practical sense.
Okay. Don?
I would agree with Larry.
So we got 3 that want discussion on town meeting floor.
But something has to be said.
Okay. Who wants to say it?
You.
Don?
Mr. Chair.
All right. Okay. So we will address it at town meeting. And I will accept Chris's apology and just ask that this never happens again.
Yeah, I will, to that point, Mr. Chairman, I'll put in the budget timeline that, the last revisions to the warrant a week before it gets signed, so that way I'm not having these requests come in towards the end.
Thank you, Chris. Old business, the one-liners, article assignments, it's in your packet. I did what I said I was gonna do. I put your name all next to what I felt was an equal amount. Larry, I put you on the wastewater articles, Julie, the zoning articles, and,
I wanted Harry in fisheries, and Don got it.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I only want happy warrant
Don got
articles.
13, you only got 12.
I only want happy warrant articles.
So is everybody okay with what they were assigned?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Ownership of the fields behind the school. Chris, we brought this up once before, and you were gonna speak to Scott Carpenter School Committee, and I've read the document now 3 times. I don't see how anyone could, other than the town of Harwich, lay claim to those fields. It's not practical that they went with the elementary school, because they weren't the elementary school's fields, they were the middle school fields.
Yep.
So, in my mind, until somebody shows me otherwise in a legal document, the town of Harwich owns and controls those fields.
I think what we were gonna do, and this kind of jogged my memory, I know I walked the site with Paul Sweetser. We were just gonna do a map that shows that we do own those fields, and then just send it over to the schools, make sure that there's a acquiescence to that. I'll check on the status of that map.
I'm not looking to change what the Little League's got in place. I
Right.
just would like them to ask the right people. And as we continue to expand the cultural center, I think that, there's opportunities for use of those fields by the town, and that, we should be in control of it. It's my own thought. Don?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And to your point, hard to argue that they vacated a middle school that has nobody in it, so that the age appropriateness of the fields doesn't match up with a school that's way on the other side of everything. Because Janelle was talking before about the use of certain areas and everything. If we're all in on paying for part of that sewage, and that building were vacant, and we don't control the fields either, then we really got hornswoggled on that agreement, because there's got to be some reason for why we're paying for part of that remediation.
Janelle?
I remember last year that the Little League fields were not getting mowed. And who mows them now? I don't remember how that all transpired.
The Little League is very, very active in controlling and maintaining those fields. I wouldn't be surprised if they mowed it, but I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I think they did, but the point that I'm trying to make is, if they're town fields, then we have to maintain them, not expect the Little League, especially if,
Well,
maybe somebody at the cultural center wants to have, a fundraiser and a softball game or something and use those fields. So this discussion has to
First we
also
gotta
go.
own them.
And
talk to Link.
But I would argue that we don't have to maintain them for the Little League field. We could just make it all solid grass and not have a diamond. They want them a certain way, so they're maintaining them, and I don't want to speak for them, but I would assume they would continue to maintain them for their own use, and also allow other townspeople to use them when they're not scheduled.
Right, Little League ends in June.
Right.
So, all summer long, we don't want that grass to get tall.
Right. Julie?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that we need to earmark them per engineering and have it documented of who owns them, so.
Larry?
No further comment.
So Chris, you'll have Paul draw the line, make the plan, bring it back to us in a reasonable amount of time, please? Okay, town administrators report.
Just, I wanted to comment a little bit on last Thursday night, April 19th. We had a meeting. It was attended by over 80 people from the community in regards to the wastewater issue. It was kind of targeted and geared towards the folks in the Pleasant Bay watershed. I thought overall, you never make everybody happy, but I thought overall it was pretty well received. I do appreciate that it was televised. I would certainly encourage folks to take a look at that. I thought that a lot of questions that people had, they received answers. I know I kind of emceed the event a little bit, and people got up, and as they were leaving, they said thank you. And then a couple people did clap at the end, so I think that they were, thought that they had received good information. And just out of that, and we do have available for folks kind of just informational packages. So there's a 4-page one, and just kind of highlight some of it. It has the 6 different articles that are on for the town meeting warrant and what the intent of those are. And then lastly, what really seemed to be what people focused on is a map that shows who is in the phase 2 and who's out. I know a few people showed up. Once they saw they were in phase 8, they left because they didn't think they needed it. So that was pretty relevant information. And I do think that there was another handout that we had on the cost to connect to the sewer and kind of why are we doing this and the different costs related. If we are to kind of maintain what people have now, we won't be able to do what the cost of that is versus the solution of having the sewer system be installed, which is fairly comparable to that cost. And then if you have to have an on-site nitrogen removal system, it's more than almost 3 times the amount. And I would just encourage folks to take a look at the kind of what drives the need to do this. So we do have those handouts that will be available. And then just, these came in on Friday, and the warrant document, I know there's a lot that have explanations, and we have, I think, everything that has a map related or an item that has a location. We have tried to provide maps, so we have tried to make the document a little bit more readable for folks. And then maybe just a plug that if, I know, Mr. Chairman, you're coming tomorrow, and I think, Larry, you're doing the voter information. You know, just, I think that the town and volunteers do a great job of kind of participating in these to get answers to questions that they have. And just another plug and thank you to Jamie and Caleb for all the work they do to make sure that these get televised as a means to educate folks in terms of what's going on at town meetings.
Thank you, Chris. Larry?
On the Thursday night meeting, I'd only add that we had a pleasant surprise. We had large attendance. We had over 80 people, which is more than we've had in other of these meetings. I think some of the criticism we've had going forward in the past is the uncertainty. And by having a list of property owners, that answered the uncertainty question for some. I think maybe a bit counterintuitive because the cost estimate has gone up in most recent costs as they get more information. But overall, I think people feel better about that because now they feel that that's a real number. The old cost was 6 years old, and this was updated and used a model that builds in a escalation inflation clause, so it should be good till at least 2020. That was help people. And I think a comment, I was thinking of you, Julie, because I hate to say this because you'll jump on it. But a comment I found interesting, there were a couple realtors in the audience that were very concerned that we defined as quickly as possible easements, location of pumps, and the easements required with that, because that already, even though 3 years out, already is affecting their discussion with potential sales. Right. So that is something I know we've talked about it, but it's something we do have to jump on. Yeah. Okay. Unrelated subject, since I have the floor. Very briefly, the Dennis Harwich Yarmouth Sewer Committee, we met as our want every monthly last Friday. Very briefly, we had a meeting earlier in the month that the 3 selectmen and 2 voted. Yarmouth decided to postpone it, but then they voted unanimously the following Tuesday. Turns out, I think their discussion was not about the merits of getting together, but it was process. They didn't feel they had enough chance to look over the material ahead of time. And for various reasons, well, let me not go there. Very briefly, we had discussions going forward that we should do that again. This is a very important project to us, and get the 3 boards together. It gives a chance to all be educated at the same time. It gives a chance to show a uniform approach to saving money and all the things we asked to save. Another part of the discussion was if this does, if it is approved by all three towns at town meeting, the thought is that we should move ahead and form a negotiating team in the manner that you guys did, the selectmen did in the past with Chatham. Have two selectmen and Chris talk formally about negotiations, because that would be the next step. As we all know, the town warrant articles is basically setting the stage for further discussions. That happens, and we have to get serious about further discussions. So the talks are moving well.
Thank you, Larry. Julie?
I just want to say that being part of Phase 2, I appreciated the information I received. I did not attend the meeting, but I do think overall the message is getting out there, and I'm glad to hear that it was well attended, so that's all I have.
Janelle?
I don't have anything.
Don?
Appreciate that the questions are being answered. You know how I feel about it, so thank you.
You know, I'd like to just say we are on the home stretch on this wastewater project. We have done an excellent job trying to get the information out there. The 4-page brochure, Chris, where can you pick that up?
We'll have it in the library, town clerk's office, and our office.
Okay. Extremely, extremely important. A lot of money, but extremely, extremely important. Just in on social media, we misrepresented tonight the $50,000 that was spent at the pet cemetery, not crematorium. Chris, can you just, if you know the answer, the $50,000 is a revolving fund, cemetery revolving fund. It's a contract under $50,000. The board didn't have to vote on it, but I think the author, Sandra Hall of Harwich Old Timers, took exception tonight to Robin mentioning that it was approved at town meeting. The pet cemetery was approved. The $50,000, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I don't want to misspeak again. Robin had kind of corrected me. What I was trying to reiterate is that if there was an appropriation, I wouldn't have spent money unless there was a valid appropriation.
Right.
And I think it was, Robin said it was from cemetery lot sales that the revenue was obtained from.
Okay.
But let me report back on that at the next meeting, and I'll dig up that warrant and dig up the vote.
Can you report back when you get that information? Will you send it to
Yes.
Dawn, who is the liaison to the Charter Review Committee, who's in contact with Sandra, and just at least get it to her so she doesn't do more damage or campaign on something that maybe she wouldn't campaign on otherwise? And I think that's it for me. We're outside of public comment and announcement. I'll let you make a brief statement if you would like, but brief, and we probably won't respond to it because it's not on the agenda, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I heard you talking about the wastewater thing, that is my question. Unfortunately, I did not get to the Thursday meeting and did not get here on time for the open. I'm in Phase 2, and I got to tell you, I've had several neighbors, and now I'm talking to neighbors about whatever on earth is going on, and I'm very late to the party and just been hearing about the wastewater. And since I do live in East Harwich, very concerned. What I've been told, and I could be completely wrong, and I would love to get maybe corrected information, and if can be told how to find that Phase 2, which I cannot understand why we're going first when we're not the high-density population, and Pleasant Bay.
So, Anna, what I'll do is I will get a hold of you tomorrow.
Okay.
And I will put you in touch with, because all those questions are in.
Well, I was going to say, I'm happy outside of the meeting, you can come down to the office and I can give you some of the literature and answer some of the questions.
There's very specific reasons why we're doing it. Part of it is town partnerships with Chatham. Part of it is Pleasant Bay. There's very specific reasons, and there's a ton of information. I'll make sure you get it.
I'm in Phase 2 as well in East Harwich. I'd be happy to talk to you sometime.
Can I just ask one question?
Go ahead.
One of the things that I heard was that for some reason, Phase 2 was going to pay more, a higher percentage of the cost for the wastewater than all the other parts of Harwich, and that seemed like completely wrong to me. And that's one of the things I was told. So it's not so much maybe the fact that we need it, or who's going first or who's going second or third or whatever, but just that for whatever the reasons, that Phase 2 was going to pay more than all the other parts.
No, I don't want to get into it. It's not on the agenda, it's outside the meeting.
Yeah.
There is a comprehensive wastewater management plan that's about that thick with a bunch of extra stuff, and it explains very detailed as to why, so it wasn't just an arbitrary decision. But I will contact you in the morning and put you in touch with both of these guys to get your answers. Anything else from the board? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.